Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. I have infinite devil fruit ability. Chapter 61. The Whitebeard Pirates. Boom, you're here. Sitting with a wine barrel and drinking, the Whitebeard looked at Anfan in front of him. At this time, Anfan's face was indifferent, wearing a big brimmed hat, wearing a black military uniform, accompanied by a black five-pointed star on his mouth, a black cloak trench coat on his shoulders, a long knife hanging from his waist, and long boots on his feet. Similar to the military uniform of the Third Reich. Behind him stood 4 revolutionary captains of the Sha Wujun army who were also in black military uniforms, but they did not have a trench coat on them. The clothes are beautiful and the whole person is heroic. Whitebeard praised that although Anfan looked small, he didn't have that sense of immaturity at all, and some were just mature, as if he had already gone into battle to kill the enemy without a general who had, 0, 0, 0, several times. Thank you for the compliment. Quote, Anfan smiled slightly, and then sat down on the deck of the ship. Do you want to drink? Asked Whitebeard, but grabbed a wine barrel with his hand and threw it directly at Anfan, not giving him a chance to speak at all. Quote, looking at the big wine barrel in his arms, Anfan was a little speechless. Let me hold it and drink. You still have a face. A bitter and caustic voice sounded, and Robbins was squeezed out of the crowd of pirates who were quietly watching Anfan, and he snorted coldly at Anfan. Anfan frowned and glanced at him coldly. Why can't I come? A hint of murderous intent flashed in Anfan's eyes. Among the 16 captains of Whitebeard, only this Robbins team captain didn't like him. Robbins's eyes reminded Anfan of the so-called righteous navy looking at him a little the same. Could this man be a spy sent by the world government to the Whitebeard pirates? Anfan thought maliciously in his heart. You white-eyed wolf, you actually used your father's name to collect pirates everywhere, and now you are in trouble, and you want to ask your father for help, Robbins said bitterly. Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, he was rudely interrupted by Whitebeard. Get down, Robbins, Whitebeard said coldly. Robbins was shocked and looked at Whitebeard in disbelief. Daddy. Whitebeard frowned and said, do you want me to say it again? Robbins glanced at Anfan fiercely, his eyes contained resentment, and he turned around and walked off the boat with a cold snort. What are you doing here? Give it to me, do whatever you have to do. Whitebeard shouted at the pirates huddled around. Suddenly, the surrounding pirates dispersed, except for the captain. Go down too. Quote, Anfan said coldly to the 4 captains behind him. Yes, quote, I already understand you're coming. Whitebeard took a sip of wine and said to Anfan. Everything you do is really earth-shattering. Whitebeard grunted, no matter how cold it was. The teachers are already the strongest men in the world, and their every move will shake the world, and whoever is like me will be attacked by the world government if they do something. Quote, Gulalala, destroy the Jincheng prison, capture the important fortress of the Navy New World, establish the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, you are a shock to everything you do. Whitebeard laughed. This time the Navy dispatched such a powerful combat force, but don't worry, you are my student, I will definitely not ignore this matter. If you want to hurt you, walk over my corpse first. Quote. A trace of coldness flashed in Whitebeard's eyes and he said, exuding a hostile aura that made the surrounding captains and Anfan feel depressed and full of suffocation. It's really our dad. The captain looked at Whitebeard with adoring eyes. What the strongest man in the world. A trace of shock flashed in Anfan's eyes. If he used his full strength, he would be hit hard with one blow. Anfan calmed the shock in his heart, and then his eyes narrowed slightly, side by side with Whitebeard, the slightly weaker Carp, Admiral Z, and the mysterious Admiral Kong. I don't know how terrifying the strength is. Seeing Anfan frowning, the Whitebeard smiled. Gulalala, you are my student, I will protect you, don't be afraid. As a man, if you dare to do something, you must dare to be it. You write that Sha Wu revolutionism is very good. If you really overthrow the world government, the whole world is estimated to be really peaceful, and I estimate that I will not be able to be a pirate at that time. Gulalala. Whitebeard's words are serious and funny. Teacher, how do you say you can awaken your domineering? Anfan asked suddenly. He felt that it was better to rely on others than on himself. His strength has been hovering at the level of the 7 Marshalseas, but his combat power is at the level of generals. If he awakens his domineering, he will be able to enter the strength of the general level, and his combat power will soar even more, and he can fight with the generation of Sengoku Carp, instead of being beaten to the point of no backhand. Awaken domineering. Whitebeard was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then said, the power of domineering mainly comes from the bloodline, and if you want to awaken this power from the bloodline, you must have strong spiritual power. Quote. Strong spiritual power. And Fan was slightly stunned, then shook his head. His spiritual power didn't know how many times stronger. Even Whitebeard's spiritual power was not as good as 1/10 of his. Whitebeard didn't understand why he shook his head when he looked at Fan. Fan thought about it for a while, and told Whitebeard about eating the copy fruit like telling the 5 old stars. You actually ate the copy fruit by. Whitebeard looked at Fan in shock. How lucky it was to eat the copy fruit. It was a devil fruit that was only a misty infinite fruit. You copy your psychic ability, and your mental power is very strong, and you can't awaken your domineering spirit like this. Whitebeard frowned. The main bloodline of domineering power, as long as it is an individual, will have it, and if the inner strength affects the bloodline, the awakening domineering is the domineering color of the overlord. If the spiritual power cannot awaken the domineering, you have the fruit of replication, then there is only one way. Quote. What's the solution? Copy the blood fruit, use the blood fruit ability, stimulate the power in the bloodline, and you will wake up domineering. And completely master the, in an instant, blood fruit. And Fan let out a deep breath. How difficult it was to find a devil fruit, let alone this kind of blood fruit that ranked high in the super energy department. He had seen it on the devil fruit illustrated book before. The blood fruit swallowed at once, and the power to manipulate the blood was very terrifying. You must know that their power came from the blood, and once it was manipulated, the consequences were very serious. Unless the whole body is naturally elementalized. Forget it, my strength at this age is no longer rare, and I want to take a step forward in the future to see the opportunity. And Fan sighed. In fact, he is really greedy enough. He actually wants to climb the world gold tower at this age, which is shocking. You have the replica fruit. No wonder you are so rebellious and do so many earth-shattering things, and no wonder those 5 old things will offer you a reward of 10 trying to lure the greedy bounty hunters and some powerful pirates in the world to hunt you. Quote. It can not only put you in danger at any time, but also allow you to kill those greedy pirates. It can really be said to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and the hearts of the 5 old stars are extremely sinister. Quote. The captains, who had never spoken, finally one spoke. And Fan glanced at it, a burly giant man, wearing armor, with an angular face. Isn't this Diamond Joe's? It's a pity that I've been seriously injured for half a year, and those greedy people who are hot on my bounty have come to their senses and understand that I'm not that easy to kill. HMPH. These guys are lucky, otherwise they will kill one by one. And Fan sneered. Okay, this is all before. What are you going to do now that the Navy is menacing? Whitebeard interrupted with a wave of his hand and asked Fan. This time the world government is directly attacking the Fatal Punch, although I promised to help you, but it is really difficult to say on the battlefield. Quote. Carp, Zephyr, and Sora join forces. I don't have the confidence to stop them. At most 2 can stop them, and their fists can only block 2 people, and each of the 3 of them will definitely die if they attack you. Quote. What's more, there are so many lieutenant generals and rear admirals, elite soldiers in the Navy. Even if you awaken your domineering, what are you going to do in this crisis? And Fan said lazily. Although they are like hungry tigers this time, my wolf is not a vegetarian. Quote. A marshal, a general, 10 lieutenant generals, 130 rear admirals, 50,000 naval soldiers, 80 large naval warships. Hee, the world government has really made a lot of money. Quote. And Fan sighed and smiled, after speaking. A grim sneer appeared on his face. If more than half of this force is lost, then the Navy will be severely damaged, and the situation of suppressing the pirates will be reversed. Do you have a way to deal with this crisis? Whitebeard looked at Fan in disbelief. If this crisis was aimed at him, he would not be able to make such a strong force lose more than half, because the combat power was really too much, and the battle was still on the sea. And Fan sneered faintly. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army and the founder of the First Empire of Sha Wu, I play not only by force, but also by wisdom. Those 5 old men never dreamed that this heavy blow would even cut off my fist, and I was unscathed, and the death toll of my piece would not be thousands, and they would die at least 30,000. Wisdom. Whitebeard looked at Fan with a slight narrowing of his eyes, which made him think of a word. Intrigue and intrigue. Teacher, I need you to do me a favor. Quote. What's the rush? Let the sea pirates of the New World be used by me. Invite them to watch a shipwreck show. New World, on an island. The sea breeze howled, and a skeletal flag of a pirate flying like a beast fluttered. In the darkness, a pirate rushed down to a man, sweating profusely and kneeling on the ground. Captain, the Whitebeard pirates invite you to a play. Quote. Oh, what's the show? A deep voice emanated from the man, his tone tinged with a chill. Shipwreck drama. Quote. Shipwreck. The man's voice was a little louder. Yes, interesting, so let's go check it out. Former G1 branch of the Navy. Quote. On an island shaped like a cake, in a dark room. Click, click. There was a constant sound of eating inside, and it was full of rapidity, as if it was continuous. There's no more. Hurry up and bring food to the old lady. Do you want to starve the old lady? In less than a minute, a cake large enough for 100 people to eat was eaten cleanly, and suddenly there was a sharp and ugly roar from inside. Mom. Quote. In less than a moment, several pirates hurriedly brought in a larger cake. In front of a huge, bloodshot obese woman, with thick lipstick and stomach acid dripping from her mouth from time to time. 000. Click, click. A swift devouring sounded, and the fat woman was too fast for a moment, accidentally grabbed a pirate, threw it into her mouth and ate it. The remaining 3 pirates looked creepy and their legs trembled. Why don't you go down yet? Do you want me to eat you? Said the obese woman, looking at the 3 pirates with bloody eyes. No, 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 Mom, we have something to say. One of the pirates sweated profusely. What's the matter? Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. Is this true? Sora looked at the Major General who came in to report with a cold face. Yes, Your Excellency Yuanshi, the famous pirates in the New World have gathered, and it is estimated that there will be more than 100,000 pirates. Quote. 100,000. Kong was slightly stunned, and then said coldly, it's useless to come to 1,000,000. You'd better get acquainted with these pirates, or they'll all sink into the sea. Quote. Have the navies from all over the country been transferred over? In 3 days, 50,000 navies will be able to arrive. On the same day, all of the famous pirates in the New World received a message from Whitebeard, inviting them to watch a shipwreck show. There are willingness, curiosity, and disdain. 1000. I've got people to do what you want to do. Whitebeard said to Fan. Thank you, teacher. Quote. You actually call me a teacher, then I should fulfill my duties as a teacher. You come to a place with me. Quote. Anfin followed Whitebeard off the boat and came to the island. This island is a round island, with mild temperatures, verdant trees, and exuding vitality. Do you know the gravity fruit? Asked Whitebeard as he walked ahead. Fan was stunned for a moment, and then nodded. I know a little. The super energy system fruit has the ability to change the gravitational magnetic field, and it ranks among the top 10 in the super energy system. Quote. Ting understands. Whitebeard smiled, and he said, I used to have a good friend of the gravity fruit ability, but then he died under the encirclement of the Navy. Quote. Whitebeard's eyes swept a trace of sadness. Before he died, he once sent me a thing. This thing further strengthened my physical fitness, so that I have the ability to fully grasp the shock fruit. That thing is called the power room, and the magnetic field in that place has been stirred up by the chaos. Whitebeard said from the front. Fan was stunned, his steps were leaked, and he heard the hidden meaning of Whitebeard's words. His copy of Whitebeard's shock fruit was discovered. Although he knew that he would be discovered early in the evening if he copied and used the ability of the shock fruit, he didn't expect it to be so fast. Whitebeard, who advocates force, has such a flexible brain. Don't be afraid, you have the ability to copy the fruit. It is very normal to copy my shock fruit. If you want to be timid, I can't look at it, you know. Whitebeard seemed to feel Anfin's nervousness behind him. Hearing that there was nothing unusual in Whitebeard's words, Fan breathed a sigh of relief, and secretly copied other people's abilities, but it was a big taboo. It is equivalent to his own family inheritance of unique martial arts, and he was suddenly stolen by others, and ordinary people can imagine what kind of anger they will become. However, I hope that you will make good use of the power of the shock fruit, and not live up to its name of destroying the world. Whitebeard changed suddenly, and said in a tone full of coldness. I will definitely live up to the name of the earthquake fruit. Fan nodded, and as he spoke, he clenched his left fist, and a blue air pressure mask appeared in his hand. Whitebeard looked at it, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. If you want to exert your power, you must have strong strength and physique, otherwise you will be shocked to death by the power of the shock fruit, or the power is out of control, and the power of the shock fruit is out of control, which is very serious, so I want you to go to the gravity room for training, although I don't know what your plan is to bury 30,000 navies with 1,000, but it is good that the strength can be improved a little. It's a very brutal training, my son, and no one has ever been asked to train here, because they're too weak and they're going to die. Quote. Whitebeard took and Fan all the way forward, when he shuttled through a dense forest, and Fan took a step forward, and a boulder that seemed to fall from the sky fell on him. Not only that, but the muscle cells of his whole body seemed to be burdened with heavy weight. Poof. Quote. And Fan directly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and his internal organs seemed to be shattered at this moment. The Whitebeard who walked in front of him walked with a slack of footsteps, and he looked at Fan with a cold face. So fragile, it's only 10 times the gravity, you can't do it anymore. You still want to be the strongest in the world. You still want to overthrow the world government. Dream. Quote. At this time, Fan's whole body was already covered with sweat. The whole person bowed down, every muscle in his body was trembling. Hearing Whitebeard's words, he gritted his teeth and stood up strongly, standing straight. He never thought that standing would be so hard. This is the gravity room. Fan gritted his teeth and said word by word, he thought that gravity was similar to a room or a training ground, Nima. That's right, this is the gravity room, with a total area of 10,000 meters, gravity is divided into 10 levels, each kilometer is 10 times, the innermost core is 100 times, and I am 100 times. Whitebeard said. He looked at Fan, his eyes hated iron and said, I originally thought that your strength could at least hold on to 50 times, but I didn't expect you to be 10 times greater. Quote. Fan swears, this is absolutely not conscientious. The first time he tried gravity training, the gravity of the muscles on his body is not terrible, what is terrible is the internal organs. Bearing a considerable 10 times the gravity, the blood speed in the blood vessels slows down 10 times, if it is someone else, 10 times and hangs up directly. And even if they come to the young yellow ape red dog, it is estimated that the situation is not much better than him, and they will suffer. Because Anfin has the ability to restore fruits, injured muscles and internal organs can recover automatically, and they are really a sad story. Is it a basic exercise in the training room? Fan gritted his teeth and said, he saw that Dragon Ball was like this. Basic sports. Hearing this, Whitebeard shook his head as if he had heard some joke, and directly grabbed Fan with a sneering smile on his face, and threw it into the void. Basic sports are so good that you think about it. Bang! Fan didn't know where to throw it, he fell to the ground, and spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood, and the sharp pain in his whole body made him angry. In this training room, it's not about basic sports, it's about fighting. Whitebeard's cold voice came, and Fan, who was furious, was slightly stunned. Fighting, who to fight? Phew, 0. A thick and rough cry came from beside him, and Fan's expression instantly stiffened, and then he turned it over like a mechanic, and his pupils suddenly shrank. I saw a big wolf with a dark body, a strong and sturdy body, 5 times larger than an ordinary wolf, thin and short limbs, and extremely hideous teeth, staring at him with a vicious face, and more than one. 1, 2, 3. At least 30 of them. Yo, it's very lively, aren't everyone rehearsing seriously? At this time, the teacher walked in with a smile on his back with his hands behind his back, although he said that he was directly prepared for Xiaoyi to take a break, but he was always a little worried that the teacher decided to come over and have a look. Although All Wen is a monster, but All Wen doesn't know that Fat Tiger is not a monster. You must know that Fat Tiger has basically bullied all his classmates except for girls and Chu Mushin, and All Wen is of course no exception. Looking at Fat Tiger's angry appearance, he was a little weak. Since he was scared, the teacher happened to come again, and All Wen hurriedly looked for a backer. Teacher, Fat Tiger Doctor and Nobita, they don't cooperate with the rehearsal. They say that it is impossible for our demon clan to defeat humans, and what journey to the west should be Monkey King to defeat all monsters or something. All Wen hurriedly told the teacher about the dispute that happened just now. You must know that the teacher is originally a person who likes to get angry, and of course now he is a monster who likes to get angry. Chu Mushin knew after observation that as long as he was angry, he would almost reveal some 01 characteristics of monsters. For example, Awen was also a little angry just now, and a little horn appeared on his head, but he didn't get completely angry because he was afraid of the fat tiger. Naturally, the teacher is unlikely to be afraid of the fat tiger. What? Humans will win against Yukai? Fat tiger. Husband. And, Nobita, what do you think? How did you learn history? The teacher was immediately furious, and could no longer maintain his form, and turned into a monster with the head of a bull and a human body. Ah! The fat tiger. Dr. Nobita and Shizuka watched the teacher turn directly into a bull-headed monster and ran away with their school bags on their backs. Chumushin's muscles were tense and stared at the teacher tightly. No Minotaur, but curiously, the Minotaur was stunned by Shizuka's screams. The teacher touched his head a little puzzled, not knowing that he was so terrible, knowing that he would be angry every day because of Nobita's tardiness. In the teacher's memory, which has changed due to the drastic change in the rules of the world, even Nobita is not as scared of himself as he is today. The teacher was a little at a loss anyway because of Shizuka's screams and escaped, and the teacher looked at Chumushin, who was staring at him, and said, "Zhao-shan, teacher, am I really so terrible? Nobita, why did they react like this? Forget Zhao-shan, you go and chase Nobita and them back, today's rehearsal will continue tomorrow." Chumushin only relaxed at this time. It seems that the teacher is still the same as the teacher, but the race is different. Of course, the taste may also be different. The highly tense muscles were slightly sore because they suddenly relaxed. Knowing the teacher, then I'll go after Nobita first. Chumushin naturally wanted to do this, and after Chumushin finished speaking, he ran outside the classroom to chase Shizuka and a few of them. Because of the delay of a little time, when Chu Muxiao waited for Shizuka and the others, they had already run away, and there was no way Chumushin could only go to the clearing first to take a look. Chumushin guessed that Shizuka and the others should go to the clearing first to hide for a while. Fat tiger, you found out. The little man held the steel pipe on the open space and said to the fat tiger next to him, who was also panting. The little man was about to lose it. What did you find? Did you find out that this world has become a monster world? Husband, I don't need you to say that I have found out, and I happily ate the strange meat that my monster mother made for me yesterday. Although the taste is very good. Fat tiger also sat on the ground panting and said. Nobita lay directly next to him and didn't even have the strength to speak. Just now, the four of them ran at full speed at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. Fat tiger, that's not what I'm talking about. I didn't eat less than I ate something strange yesterday. I'm talking about you finding that we haven't been very abnormal since we came back from the past yesterday. The husband waved his hand, because he was so tired that he couldn't even finish talking at once. After a pause, the husband continued. So, this matter must have something to do with Nobita and Dorae. So Nobita, you listen, you hurry back and find Doraemon's solution, do you know? The doctor glared at Nobita, who was tired and lying on the ground, and in the doctor's opinion, it was all Nobita's fault and Dorae. After Xiaofu's prompt, Fat Tiger also came back to his senses all of a sudden, and immediately lifted Nobita, who was lying on the ground, fiercely. Nobita, hurry up and go back and settle this matter with Dore. Okay, I know it's my fault with Doraemon, I'm going to go back to Doraemon. Nobita hurriedly admitted his mistake. In fact, Nobita also vaguely felt that the world had become so abnormal and so strange that it had something to do with him. Okay, then you hurry up and figure out a way with Dora. Let's go home first and wait for Nobita's good news. Let's go quickly. After finishing speaking, the Fat Tiger Doctor and Shizuka didn't dare to stay here for a long time, and hurriedly rushed to their own home. In their opinion, home is the warmest place. Not long after Shizuka and they disbanded and went home, Chumushin chased him to the open space, looking at the obvious traces of chaos behind the steel pipe in the open space and the traces of someone lying down. He secretly said that it was too late. There was no way Chumushin could only go to Shizuka first. Compared to the two boys who had Doraemon, Nobita and Fat Tiger Xiaofu, Shizuka was the one who should be most worried. And after the teacher's mighty and huge body just now, but because of Shizuka's screams, he became helpless. In addition to the race, hobbies and tastes have changed. The other personalities are still the same as before. Of course, it's just a little irritable. Chumushin glanced at the sky again. The bats began to haunt again, and he had to hurry up. There was no choice but to speed up to Shizuka's house. Mom, I'm back. Shizuka had already run home at this time, subconsciously opened the door and shouted. Just after shouting Shizuka, she hurriedly covered her mouth. Shizuka forgot that she was skipping school today. If her mother knew about her truancy, she wouldn't be angry and exploded. 3 days later, the white of the fish belly in the east slowly rose, and a touch of golden sunlight shone on the body of a demon who was covered in blood and exuded a sense of anger. At the feet of this demon head, countless python corpses are upside down. Bang! And Fan clenched his fists and shook his head. The bones of his whole body crackled, like firecrackers. Almost, teacher. And Fan looked at a big stone in the distance, and on the head of the big stone, the white beard lay there quietly sleeping, not caring about the strong smell of blood in the air. Ah! Whitebeard woke up and said with confused eyes. And Fan nodded. The navy is probably already on its way, and we should be able to see them in the afternoon. Hey! I really want to see their mighty army. And Fan chuckled. Whitebeard nodded. I want to meet too, a marshal, a general, a 10th lieutenant general. This kind of huge lineup is rare. There are people who are excited. Quote. Ooh, don't worry. I really invited them to come to the play, and I was discussing some other things. Quote. And Fan said with a smile, let these people help him. What are you kidding? He doesn't want to be stabbed by this group of guys in the back. These scumbags, if they have a big plan, the birds will not bird them, and in the future, they will be strong, and they will kill none of these guys. In the name of freedom, he is doing things that are robbers, a bunch of scum. Let's go, teacher, we have to go meet them. And Fan said indifferently, they are the masters, and some etiquette must naturally be done. Whitebeard looked at the corpses of the python all over the ground and nodded in satisfaction. You killed 1,000 wolves in 10 times gravity, 500 orangutans in 20 times gravity, and 300 pythons in 30 times gravity. Quote. You've taken a big leap forward in all aspects of your body, especially your internal organs, and you won't die immediately if you get hurt in the future. Quote. And Fan nodded. He also felt that his body had made great progress. This effect was even better than directly devouring energy. After all, he could feel the power of every piece of his body down to the cells, from nothing to strength, which made him very intoxicated. It's just that exercising in person is harder and more tiring, but I can feel a lot. Devour the energy, feel the ease of speed instantly. In short, there are pros and cons to the two. If the two complement each other, absorb the strength and then exercise wildly, the effect should be 1 + 1, and you have to wait for him to achieve it in the future. In 3 days, you killed 2 days and 1. Along the way, seeing in Fan's calm face and no bloodshot eyes, Whitebeard asked in disbelief. But when he saw how crazy and Fan was, the moment the killing began, his eyes were going to be blinded, and he didn't know whether to say whether his students were crazy or evil. Teacher, have you forgotten my mental power? And Fan said after a pause. Whitebeard was slightly stunned, then nodded in a trance, and he said, strong mental strength can reduce sleep, but your physical strength should consume a lot. I haven't seen you eat for 3 days. Quote. The flesh of those beasts in the gravity zone is too stiff to be roasted, and even if it is cooked, it is so hard, who can eat it? Although he could go out and get wine and meat on his own boat, for the safety of his student, he held back, for fear of any accidents. As a result, the hair didn't happen for 3 days, which made Whitebeard regret dying. He hadn't drunk for 3 days. And Fan touched his shriveled stomach and said, I'm really hungry, wait until I go back and kill the Sea Kings, so that I can recover my strength. Quote. Whitebeard's eyes lit up. What a good idea. After and Fan walked out of the gravity area, he suddenly felt as relaxed as if he had entered the sea, and his whole body was surging with amazing strength. Before you go, you have to deal with something. Quote. And Fan turned slightly to look at the crumbling and rancid wolf corpses in the gravity area, and with a clench of his left hand, a blue air pressure mask appeared. Boom! An astonishing and terrifying explosion shook through. Equals 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 equals. Oh yes, what's going on? At this time, around the Whitebeard pirate ship, an equally huge pirate ship was moored, and a tall man with a crazy face walked down, followed by more than a dozen subordinates. The man shouted in surprise as he watched the startling bombardment erupt in the middle of the island. It's Kaido, the beast. Quote. Beast Kaido, why did he come so early? More than 000 white-bearded pirate captains looked at this arrogant man with a drop of sweat on their foreheads. Well, where are Whitebeard and the Sons of Sin? They are the hosts, why don't they come and pick up our guests? Kaido of the 100 Beasts rolled his eyes and asked the captains with doubts. Suddenly, they could feel a huge depression rushing towards them, suffocating them. Where did they go? Asked Kaido the Beast. Dadan and Fan have gone to the island to cultivate, and they will come out soon. Diamond Joes waved loudly. Cultivation. Ha ha. Are you afraid of the navy? Ha 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 ha. The Beast Kaido laughed wildly, his laughter full of mockery. The captains of Diamond Joes looked at Kaido's mocking smile with anger on their faces. Goo la la la, who is laughing so loudly? It's a nasty sound. Quote. The 100 Beasts Kaido laughed wildly, and the two voices came with disdain, and the wild laughter suddenly leaked. In his sight, a huge figure, a signature crescent beard, a cold white beard, and a slightly short body covered in blood, with a long knife hanging from his waist, looked extremely hideous. Goo la la la, who is laughing so loudly? It's a nuisance to hear. Quote. The 100 Beasts Kaido squinted at the big and small ones who came in front of him. The strongest man in the world, Whitebeard. Daddy, you're finally out. Several captains looked at Whitebeard and breathed a sigh of relief, as if they didn't have a backbone without their father. And Fan took off his bloody clothes, handed them to the commander of the Sha Wu army, and said indifferently, Son of Sin. This title is really ironic. I prefer others to call me the leader of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, or the head of the Sha Wu Empire. Quote. Ha ha, the leader of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, the head of the Sha Wu Empire, wait until you survive the fierce attack of the navy. The 100 Beast Kaido sneered, this time the navy has been dispatched. Before he finished speaking, and Fan waved his hand impatiently and said, this time the navy dispatched a marshal, a senior general, 10 lieutenant generals, 130 rear admirals, 50,000 naval soldiers, and 80 large naval warships. I've known this for a long time. Quote. You're so annoying. And Fan said coldly and unabashedly as he looked at the Beast Kaido's unruly eyes full of beasts. And Fan suddenly remembered something, patted his forehead and suddenly said, I forgot, you are not a human anymore. Quote. The face of the 100 Beast Kaido suddenly froze, and his eyes flashed with a hint of violence, a look that wanted to kill and Fan on the spot. Children, you can eat candy indiscriminately, but you can't talk nonsense. Quote. Beast Kaido said coldly. Seeing the tension between the two sides, Whitebeard stood up at this time and said, Gulala, everyone come to the bar. Quote. Whitebeard's words may not be good, but because of his world's strongest strength, it is impossible for either side to ignore it. Yes, I'd like to taste Daddy Whitebeard's wine and see what the taste has won over Daddy Whitebeard. Kaido of the Beasts took a barrel and laughed. And Fan glanced at it lightly and said, I won't drink it. Quote. Whitebeard and Beast Kaido suddenly froze. Whitebeard was fine, but Beast Kaido's face collapsed. This and Fan seems to have a heart to get along with him. The 100 Beasts Kaido looked at Fan with a pale face, with a slight force in his hand, clutching the wine barrel tightly, as if he wanted to pinch it. I'm going to take a shower, and I've been killing for 3 days and 3 nights, and I'm dirty to death. Quote. At this time, Fan's whole body has been taken off cleanly except for pants X, there is no imagined white and tender, and there are no so-called 8 streamlined abdominal muscles, some are just normal color, and there are scars all over the body. These injuries don't look like they're caused by the battle. The Beast looked at the scars on Fan's back. Not really. Several captains were stunned, and slowly nodded in agreement. The scars of the people who fought were very serious, and the wounds were very deep and not large, while the injuries on Fan's back were very shallow and wide. Whitebeard looked blankly at Fan's back. For a man who had broken through the world, these scars were very familiar to him. These were the scars of being abused. That's right. These wounds were not the injuries of the sword battle, because those injuries were healed by Fan's own recovery ability, and these injuries were the testimony of the humiliation that Fan had suffered in the 10 years of the noble region of the heavenly dragons in the Holy Land, the source of hatred. The nobles of the world on the Holy Land of Marihoya will not be killed by him, and Fan vows to never let these shames disappear. Sure enough, when you enter the sea, those who are capable are powerless. Quote. Fan entered the sea and felt a sense of powerlessness coming from his whole body, and his whole body was weak, but he would not humiliate the sea. Whoosh! Quote. And Fan exerted all his strength, like a swordfish swimming into the depths of the sea. He's a man of power. Beast Kaido said uncertainly, do those who have the ability dare to go to the sea? Ha! The Whitebeard who was in a daze suddenly sensed something, and looked at the sea. I saw a pirate ship in the shape of a cake appear in the distant sea, and if it weren't for the pirate flag floating on it, I would have thought it was a big cake. When the 100 Beasts Kaido saw this pirate ship, he cut, and said in disgust, this man-eating fat woman is also here. Quote. Gu la la la, she was also invited, but I didn't think she would come, but I didn't expect her to come. Whitebeard squinted. He was very surprised by Charlotte Lingling's arrival. You must know that this guy is addicted to food, especially sweets. For the sake of sweets, he does not hesitate to mobilize to conquer a country. This kind of super foodie who wants to eat sweets 24 hours a day, is actually interested in this. I heard that this cannibalistic fat woman has a daughter. I really can't believe that someone would marry him as a wife. This taste is really outrageous, ha ha ha. Beast Kaido laughed with a sarcastic smile. She's coming, and if she hears it, she won't let you go. Whitebeard said coldly, although Charlotte Lingling's matter is very funny, he still hates others talking bad about him in the back. And what's so funny about this? Cut. Beast Kaido snorted disdainfully. He snorted coldly and said, I'm afraid of her. This man-eating fat woman dared to attack my territory last time in order to eat snacks, and I haven't even settled accounts with her. She dares to come to the door. Be careful that I kill her. Quote. Kaido, what are you talking about? You're going to kill me. After the cake boat stopped, Charlotte Lingling, who was extremely huge, walked out, looking at the Beast Kaido with blood-red eyes. Get out of the way, cannibalistic fat woman. Beast Kaido said with disgust on his face. This thick cake smell disgusted him, especially when he saw people. He wanted to vomit. Kaido, do you know that you are really looking for death? Charlotte Lingling stared at Kaido with bloodshot eyes, her whole body full of terrifying killing intent. The temperature on the entire mild island seemed to drop by a few degrees in an instant, and everyone felt cold. Boom! Suddenly, a huge wave erupted from the sea, and a sea king was thrown up and smashed on the edge of the island, causing a terrifying impact, and the stirring dust engulfed everyone. Fights are forbidden here, and Fan stood on the sea, looked at the two sides and said coldly. As time passed, more and more pirate ships appeared in it, almost crowding the port, and every pirate ship captain who came here offered a bounty of at least 100 million, otherwise he would not be qualified to come if he was embarrassed to come. Naki, you guy actually dared to come. I didn't dare to rob my merchant ship last time, and I haven't settled accounts with you yet. Quote. HMPH, it's Moto, this is Daddy Whitebeard's territory, do you dare to do it? What are you yelling about? Quote. What are you? Get out of here. Quote. Labor and management are 250 million bounty criminals, do you dare to drag it in front of labor and management? I'm 270 million bounties, 20 million more than you scum, get away from me. Don't call labor and management from 000. Be careful that labor and management cut off your head. The entire island has become a miasma of smoke because of these pirates, full of noise and conflict. They can break through to the level of the New World and survive, each of which is not a simple character. But no matter how good it is, these guys will give Whitebeard a face, no matter how unruly they are. Because Whitebeard is the strongest man in the world, no one wants to eat one of his fists. Gu la la la, Anfin, because of you kid, my base camp has become a gathering place for hooligans and ruffians. Quote. On the bow of No's giant pirate ship, Whitebeard looked coldly at the various pirates chattering below, and said to Anfan. Hearing this, Anfan suddenly laughed as if he had heard some joke. If these guys are hooligans, then what are you? The strongest hooligan riffraff in the world. Seeing Anfan's amusement, Whitebeard immediately came to his senses, and immediately became a little embarrassed, and quickly changed the topic. Gu la la la, do you really have any way to do this? You know, although these guys are here to watch a play, they must have bad intentions. Quote. Whitebeard was still a little uneasy, and asked Anfan, quite curious and full of doubts about the so-called conspiracy. You must know that this Anfang has not done anything. and he has been training in the gravity area, and the desperate training has made him quite suspicious. Could it be that there is no way at all, and he is temporarily cramming? Whitebeard speculated maliciously in his heart. Feeling the change in Whitebeard's heart, and Fan smiled lightly. Didn't you know in the afternoon? But the Navy has come all the way to the New World, so let's pay tribute to the friendship of the landlords. Quote. A hint of evil intent hung on the corner of Fan's mouth, and his eyes were filled with brutal will. Let's go, the guests are almost here, it's time for us lords to come out and say something. Goo la la la, that's what I said, but don't go over, you can go by yourself. Whitebeard laughed. There are two ways to reach the New World. It is to go to the Chambord Islands, where the Yarki mangrove resin will be used to coat the ships, a coater is required, and then dive 10,000 meters from here to cross a giant cave located under the Red Continent, and pass through the undersea route, Fishman Island to reach the New World. The other one is to make a request to the world government and then go directly through the Holy Land of Marijoya, located at the peak of the Red Continent, and enter the New World. But since it is a navy, of course, there is no need to take the first such risky path like pirates. They directly intersperse the Holy Land of Marijoya and enter the New World. 80 warships entered the warships in an orderly manner, each warship formed in a formation of 8, each formation accompanied by a lieutenant general, 8 or 9 major generals, and more than 600 soldiers and officers on each warship, and drove directly into the advancing city. Its large formation made many people want to see it, because it was the largest naval dispatch in history, and it could be the last. This time, the son of Sin is decided, and under so many naval attacks, he must not even have scum left. Quote. This evil beast dares to betray the world government, and wants to overthrow the world government. He is really impatient. What Sha Wu revolutionism is, it's all some bullshit. I must strangle Sha Wu's revolutionism, kill that little brute, and actually say that our world aristocracy is the biggest crime in the world. It's really unforgivable. Quote. On the side of the Holy Land Marijoy, many nobles from the world gathered, and they looked at the naval warships that rode one after another with adoring and haughty, and discussed with each other and said loudly. For the first time, they really felt fear for the emergence of the first empire of Sha Wu, Wu revolutionism. Fear of losing the noble status of the world's nobility. They don't want to lose the title of world nobility, they want to eat the best wine, the sea kings caught in the deep sea, live in luxurious villas, wear brocade clothes with masonry, and enjoy the right to be high. If they lose it all, they will go crazy. Therefore, they want to destroy the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, let everyone in the world know, overthrow the world government, and provoke the fate of their world nobles. Central formation on a warship. Carp sat on the bow of the boat, digging his nostrils, and said with an unhappy face, these nobles of the world are really annoying. Is there something wrong with the eyes? Sora ignored Carp's complaints, and he and Z will continue to discuss things. The former G0 branch of the Navy, it took us 3 hours to arrive. General Z said. 3 hours, so you can arrive at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Sora said quietly in thought. Slow down, 7 hours, arrive at 4 p.m., let the soldiers rest immediately, recharge their energy for 7 hours, and then there will be a hard fight, so that the soldiers can relax. Sora said. Anfin stood on the railing, looking indifferently at the edge of the island below, which looked like a place of sin. You scumbags, you can shut up. And Fan's cold voice reached the ears of everyone below. The temperature on the entire island seemed to drop to the extreme in an instant, full of ice, and the air was filled with an astonishing amount of murderous intent, as if everything was about to be crushed. The former G1 branch fortress of the Navy, now the headquarters of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. A crimson flag with a black 5-pointed star fluttered above. Thousands of Sha Wu revolutionary soldiers were busy in the fortress city, the cannons were pushed up the fortress wall, the black hole of the cannon was aimed at the sea in front of them, and then black cannonballs were placed around, and 5 soldiers stood next to each cannon. The entire fortress was put on tight alert, and it seemed that once the navy appeared, it would be attacked by thunder. Gulala, I don't know how you took down such a strong and well-defended fortress on the spot. Quote. Standing at the highest point in the fortress city, Whitebeard looked down at the tight cross-pinch cannon port below, and asked Fan in surprise. As an important town of the G1 branch of the Navy, he felt a little strange that it was captured by his own students. Hearing this, Fan laughed and said, I guess I also took shit luck at that time. For the first time, and Fan felt that the defense of the G1 branch of the Navy was very terrifying, and if those navies on the spot did not have a blind worship and trust in Vice Admiral Akainu, it is estimated that he would not be able to take this fortress at all. Actually, you can't do anything about the Navy this time, Whitebeard said to Fan with a serious expression. Fan was stunned when he heard this, and he looked at Whitebeard a little strangely. Why do you ask? I see that you are going to fortify the city so tightly that all the soldiers seem to be busy and can't stop, and you seem to be planning to fight them to the death. Quote. Fan was stunned, and then laughed, his tone full of joy. It's really good that you think so, it's really great, this time the destruction of the Navy is a foregone conclusion, ha ha ha. The heyday of the world government has gone downhill since then, ha ha ha. The world-shaking reshuffle is about to begin. Quote. Equals. The high-level observation room in the fortress city, because this is the command post in the fortress city, you can sit here and look down on all the battles below. Dozens of pirate captains sat here, very quietly, which was too rare for them to be unruly. Of course, they didn't become well-behaved, but they all looked at their two fat men and women in the first row in a cold sweat. Kaido the Beast, Charlotte Lingling. Kaido of the 100 Beasts is a brutal man, more beast than a beast. Charlotte Lingling, a scary guy who often eats people. No matter which one they are, they can't afford to provoke them. In this world where the strong are respected, once one of them is provoked, there is only one way to die. They sat on one side and were afraid of what was in their stomachs. Why hasn't the Navy come yet? Charlotte Lingling screamed as she ate her cake and watched the bloody fight. Beast Kaido frowned and said, why do you put our people outside, or they will come in? Could it be that this son of Sin intends to let our people fight for them? But the people who came to see the show are not here to help. Quote. Bailey Kaido didn't care about the life or death of his subordinates, he just didn't want to be used by Anfin, so he would be psychologically uncomfortable. That's it. This son of Sin is truly abominable. Quote. If he dares to use my people as cannon fodder, I will definitely make a mess with him directly. Quote. Kaido of the 100 Beasts spoke the hearts of all the captains of the pirates here, and after they came here, they were only allowed to enter themselves, but they did not allow their men to enter, and let them stay outside the fortress. If it weren't for the fleet of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army outside, they would all think that Fan would use them as cannon fodder. Bang! At this moment, the door was suddenly opened. Fan, who was wearing the uniform of the leader of Sha Wu, walked in, followed by 6 Sha Wu army captains, which could be described as extremely majestic. Upside down, Fan's eyes looked coldly at one of the pirate captains. You said you were going to make a big deal here. Quote. The pirate captain was scared to drop a drop of sweat from his forehead under Fan's eerie pupils. No, it's not. The captain of the pirates stammered in a cold sweat. If you have an opinion, you can take your people out of the way right away. Fan said in a cold voice. There are at least a few hundred of the New World pirates, but only a few people came, and those people didn't take my Sha Wu Revolutionary Army seriously at all. Quote. Fan said with a cold face. Whitebeard's base camp gathered to see a lot of people, but I didn't expect that there were only so many dozens. Oh, is the son of Sin going too? Charlotte Lingling listened to the movements in her mouth, and her bloodshot eyes looked at Fan with deep meaning. This time the Navy has passed, and the New World will be washed in blood. Fan said expressionlessly, the New World says that it is not small, and it is not big, so it is okay to keep a few people. Quote. Oh, blood, the New World, the son of Sin is really capable. Beast Kaido laughed. No, I'm not alone, I'm just you. Quote. We, said Kaido, the beast, was slightly stunned, and then laughed as if he had heard some joke. You're so arrogant, how do you know we're going to help you with blood washing? New World. Beast Kaido laughed, his eyes playfully glancing at the captain of the pirates in a cold sweat. I'm talking about the two of you, Kaido the Beast, Charlotte Lingling, and as for them. A bunch of garbage, not eligible for zero. Fan ignored these pirate captains, although the pirate captains offered a reward of a few and a bull fork, but in his eyes he was just a clown who couldn't get on the stage. The two of us, you want to take advantage of the two of us? Said Kaido, the Beast, pointing at himself and Charlotte Lingling, looking at Fan with a look of joy and mockery. That's right, use. Because I have a stake in making your hearts flutter. Quote. Let us divide all the benefits of the new world. I have a plan. I named it 4 Emperors Plan. Leader, 50 squads have been assembled. Quote. A Sha Wu Revolutionary Army commander walked into An Fan's office and saluted. Yes, I'll go right away, you go down first. Quote. An Fan said with his back to the captain, holding a small bowl in his hand. In this small bowl, there was half a bowl of scarlet blood, and the smell of blood was scattered. Phew, have you started? An Fan's face was slightly heavy, and he was in a relaxed mood for the arrival of the Navy, but it was fake, a mysterious marshal, 2 generals whose strength was comparable to that of Whitebeard, a lieutenant general, and 2 natural devil fruit abilities. This powerful collective combat power could not be ignored by anyone. The wisdom of the 5 old stars is amazing. There is no so-called contempt, some just attach importance to it, and then attach importance to it. But you have your tricks, and I have my tricks. Although it is said that it is up to man to succeed and to plan for it, I believe that man will be able to conquer heaven if he is determined. An Fan's face flashed with a hint of anger, and his eyes were slightly complicated when he looked at the bowl of blood in his hand. The heart was ruthless, and the cold intention filled his eyes, and he swallowed it directly without hesitation, and a trace of demonic blush suddenly appeared on his cheeks. Bang! Quote. The bowl fell to the ground and shattered. An Fan grabbed his cloak, threw it on his body, and walked out quickly with his waist knife. Let's go, take me to the little dark room first, and see if the woman has figured it out. Quote. An Fan walked out of the office and looked at the 10 guards, just about to talk about getting on the warship, but before he could say anything, he thought about something and turned to say. He remembered that today was the date when Tina had made her choice. If Tina doesn't make a choice that satisfies his heart, it's a pity. No matter who you are, go with me and die against me. Although he could forcibly control Tina, he didn't want to waste his spiritual resources on a woman who was useless, even if she was beautiful. All the way to the little dark room where Tina was being held. The lights are off, and Tina may not be able to stand the darkness that her eyes are accustomed to suddenly brightening up after being locked in the little dark room for so long. An Fan said indifferently. Squeak. The door opened, and even though the lights in the hallway were turned off, Tina, who was sitting inside, was squinted by the faint light outside. Oops. Quote. Tina's eyes narrowed, almost closing. It wasn't until Tina slowly got used to it that her eyes widened before An Fan spoke. Why don't you think about it? Quote. What happens if I choose not to join? Tina looked at An Fan and asked in a complicated manner. Join the students. Don't join. Die. Do I have a choice? Seeing An Fan's cold and stiff face and said, Tina's face was ugly and said bitterly. An Fan frowned slightly, and the answer he was satisfied with in his heart, not that his face was bitter and his tone was full of bitterness, and he asked to join completely, not to be in Sao Ying, his heart was in Han. What was the use of keeping it like that? I hope you can be sincere. If you dare to make any small moves, I will deal with you bloody. An Fan said coldly, and then turned around and left. After walking a few steps, he stopped, turned his back to him and said, You don't have to go to the battlefield this time, go wash your whole body, and sleep again, everything will be fine. Quote. After speaking, except for the 4 who stayed, the remaining 6 all left with An Fan. Battlefield. Tina was slightly stunned, and then said with some surprise, The Navy is coming. Huh. The 4 guards looked at Tina coldly. This An Fan didn't even want us to participate, so he offered to help him, but he was rejected. 100 Beasts Kaido was at the command post of the fortress, standing by the window watching An Fan and Whitebeard get on the boat, and then set off with almost 2,000 Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. The 2,000-strong Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, the 100 Beasts Kaido wanted to laugh when they looked at it. Is this An Fan a pen or a pen? 2,000 people or not even a fraction of the Navy. There are at least 5,000 people in the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, and he doesn't even bring half of them, so he should have some strategy. I'm afraid that we will hinder his plan. Charlotte Lingling said as she ate her cake. However, regardless of whether it wins or not, the light Sha Wu Revolutionary Army will also be seriously injured, and the heavy Sha Wu Revolutionary Army will be removed. Quote. You cannibalistic fat woman, you probably don't know, why is An Fan wanted as the son of Sin and offered a reward of 10 E? Why, according to my world government's intelligence source, this guy is wanted for eating the fruit of replication and copying the ability of the fruit of the heart. Quote. Psychic fruit, the ability to manipulate the mind. Doesn't that mean that this guy can create countless revolutionary armies at any time? Yes, yes, said the beast. Kaido laughed. I suddenly knew why he was summoning the pirates of the New World. Charlotte Lingling said. Beast. Kaido laughed wildly. I understand too. Ha ha. Quote. This son of sin is an ally with us now, and he won't let us interfere in his fight with the Navy, so why don't we give him a big gift? Charlotte Lingling's bloodshot eyes looked at the group of pirate captains who were constantly sweating coldly, and a cruel smile appeared on her huge mouth. Thank you for your help, teacher. Quote. Standing on the bow of the boat, and Fan thanked the Whitebeard beside him. Gu la la la, Anfin, what is your solution? Whitebeard asked and Fan. Teacher, you just listen to my instructions, I have a way. Quote. And Fan's eyes flashed with inexplicable excitement, and his eyes were like a wise man who held the whole situation again. Well, I believe you. Whitebeard took a deep breath. Be careful, kid. I'll do my best to help you block the air, Carp, Z. Ha, and Fan smiled lightly and did not speak. Bell, bell. At this moment, a continuous burst of wind chimes rang, from the distant sea ahead. As time passed, the wind chimes became louder and louder, and a giant warship with white sails appeared in sky blue, and then two appeared on both sides. More and more, unusually huge, especially the wind chimes, neat and very shocking. On these warships there is a common flag, the seagull white flag. Here they are. And Fan chuckled. Navy. Bell, bell. Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. Standing on the bow of a naval warship, his eyes full of coldness, he looked at the dark red-black five-pointed star flag hanging in front of him. Looking at the warships of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, which were not unified like miscellaneous cards, a trace of disdain flashed in his empty eyes, and a trace of disdain flashed in the eyes of all the navies. The warships are lined up, and there is no tactics at all. Quote. Sora looked at the Sha Wu Revolutionary warship side by side, and couldn't help but shake his head and smile contemptuously. Anyone who knows the knowledge of naval warfare knows that warships cannot be lined up in battle, because it is easy to be hit, and it is easier for the enemy to get close to the fleet, because after a shot, you have to load the shells, and it takes time to fill the shells, so as to give the enemy time to continue advancing. Even if it's the most basic, you have to line up several echelons side by side, forming several fronts. Revolutionary. If you still want to overthrow the world government, dream about it. Report to Your Excellency Marshal. Behind the Sha Wu Revolutionary warship, a large number of fleets have been found under the G1 branch of the Navy, and after visual inspection, they are all pirates. A Navy colonel came to the sky and saluted and reported. Pirates. Sora's face was full of anger, and he snorted coldly, if you dare to come here, then it's better to stay here forever. Quote. I now order the 1st and 2nd fleets to attack the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army fleet in front, and the rest of the fleet to advance directly to the G1 fortress of the Navy, and annihilate the group of pirates without leaving them alive. He commanded with a wave of his hand. He directly used 16 naval warships to attack dozens of Sha Wu warships where Fan was located, and he didn't know whether it was arrogance or self-confidence. Marshal, wait. Quote. At this time, Carp suddenly stopped Sora's order. What's wrong? Sora frowned at Carp. Marshal, you might as well take a closer look. Whitebeard and Fan are also there. The warship will be torn to pieces by the shock ability when it passes like this. Carp said. What? They actually came directly to the front line for a decisive battle. Kong was stunned for a moment, grabbed the binoculars casually and looked, and sure enough, two familiar figures entered his line of sight. And Fan, who was standing on the bow of one of the Sha Wu Revolutionary warships, frowned. He felt that someone was peeping at him, and his eyes looked in the direction of his senses, and he looked at the surprised eyes in the sky from a distance. What's wrong? Whitebeard looked at Fan with a sneer. On that warship, it's a warship made by the Admiral's flight attendants. Fan pointed over and said, I saw Carp, General Z, Qingzi, and Yellow Ape all on that warship. Quote. How do you see that? Whitebeard was a little Anfin, and the Navy warships were still some distance away from them. This guy's eyes are strange, how can they be like eagles? Said the telescope, muttering to himself with a strange expression. My eyesight was born out of the ordinary. And Fan's pure black eyes looked at the Whitebeard and said with a smile. Whitebeard and the Son of Sin are on a warship, fighting us in a direct battle. I really don't know if it's better to say it's arrogant, or what. This Son of Sin is really still too young. When I saw him write earth-shattering revolutionism, I thought how smart he would be, hee. Kong said with a sneer, and he reordered. All warships target the Shawu revolutionary warship in front of them. Once they are within range, open fire. Quote. Yes, the captain saluted. If you want to fight directly, then let's fight a decisive battle. I hope I can withstand it. Quote. The corners of his empty mouth hooked up a sneer and said. Although Whitebeard is the strongest man in the world, the heroes can't stand the beating of everyone, and they have so much powerful combat power on their side. Ha, Anfin, the Son of Sin. Let the shame of the world government and the Navy headquarters be completely wiped out today. 3,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters, got into the shelling range, shot. Quote. A shouting order was directly transmitted to all naval warships, and at this time, the guns of the naval warships had already been aimed at the Shawu revolutionary warship, and they could only ignite the guns and fire their guns with a single order. Boom, boom, boom. The keels of more than a dozen naval warships at the forefront shook and fired in a neat salvo. Countless black cannonballs struck like a raging storm, and the cannonballs flew sideways, splashing countless monstrous waves on the surface of the sea. At the same time, the revolutionary warships of Shawu also launched artillery bombardments, and the two sides engaged in a fierce naval battle. The entire sky was filled with the sound of shells whistling at breakneck speed, followed by the sound of explosive explosions. Whitebeard, you actually used Anfin, the Son of Sin, as a thug. Sora's voice came slowly, full of sarcasm. Do you know that you are being used by him? Quote. Sora, since you became the Marshal of the Navy, you have really become more and more able to speak, say. Quote. Hearing this, Whitebeard directly retorted loudly, his tone full of questioning. Hearing this, and Fan laughed, and Carp on the Navy warship directly tilted his head to the side, his shoulders shaking. Sora's face turned blue in an instant, and he glared at Carp fiercely. Whitebeard, I can't believe that your mouth has become so sharp. Is it because of the children of sin? Said Sora loudly. And Fan was not happy for a moment, so he raised his hand directly, grabbed the cannonball flying towards him with his mental power, and threw it back hard. Don't blame me for anything, I'm innocent. And Fan said. As soon as the words fell, a loud bang rang out. Boom. A naval warship was directly hit by Fan's shell, and very good luck hit the warehouse where the shells were stored, which immediately caused a chain reaction. The entire warship was directly blown to pieces, and all the naval joints on it were bombarded and killed, and none of the 600 soldiers and a major general survived. Kong's face instantly turned the color of pork liver. Less than a minute after the naval battle between the two sides began, a warship on their strong side sank. Chapter 71. Looking at the warship that turned into a wreck and burned on the sea, and Fan touched his head and looked apologetic. I'm sorry. Quote. Although it was an apology, the banter in those eyes made everyone know that it was a malicious mockery. Great. I hope you'll be able to laugh again. Sora yelled with a black face. Carp, Zephyr, you two go and kill this Son of Sin for me. Quote. Before he could finish his words, a huge figure stepped forward and said coldly. Goo la la la, empty, isn't it bad to bully the small? Whitebeard raised his broadsword and said. Whitebeard, are you really trying to stop us? Sora squinted his eyes and said sharply. To be honest, he was very reluctant to fight the strongest man in the world, not because he was afraid of him, but because he was worried about Whitebeard's ability, Shock Fruit. This fruit with the strongest attack power has the ability to destroy the world. Once they get their hands done, they are fine, but the naval soldiers below are not, especially at sea, which can easily lead to a tsunami. One tsunami was enough to kill 50,000 elite soldiers. Although the size of the world's navy is more than 1 million, these 50,000 are nothing, but if you know that 80% of the more than 1 million navies are straw bales, these 50,000 elites are quite expensive. If it weren't for the maintenance of world domination, the air would have cut off these cumbersome straw bales and navy long ago. Goo la la la, it's really not good to bully the small. Quote. An air pressure mask appeared in Whitebeard's hand. Boom, boom. At this moment, 2 huge explosions sounded, and 2 more warships were hit by the vital point, setting off a monstrous explosion and turning into flame material burning on the surface of the sea. The air was so black that it was about to drip ink, and 2 of their warships were sunk. On the other hand, the Shawu revolutionary warships, Mao's losses were not there. Are their navies all straw bales? Sora stared at Anfan fiercely. His domineering spirit felt a special power. It was psychokinesis. This son of sin has copied the fruit of mindfulness, so he is the one who has come to make trouble of it. Carp, Zephyr, you deal with Whitebeard, Yellow Ape, and Childish, you two deal with the son of sin. You must wipe him out for me, and the shame of the navy is up to you to wash away today. Quote. Whitebeard. Zephyr smiled. His eyes were full of battle and looked at Whitebeard. They hadn't fought each other for a long time. Ha, Whitebeard, my big hanger is all ready and thirsty, take it. Kafaha laughed and took out a donut and stuffed it into his mouth. Quote. Quote. The people around him looked at Carp with black lines on their foreheads. It's Carp, Enku said, full of joy. Ice Age. Quote. A cold snort. Qingzi did not hesitate, jumped directly on the sea, pressed his hand on the surface. The extremely cold temperature instantly formed ice cubes, and scattered around. In less than 10 seconds, the ice cubes froze the surrounding 3,000 meters of sea surface. The warships of both sides were stuck directly on the ice. Wipe out all these Shawu revolutionary army in the name of justice. Kong Leng shouted. Oh, the Navy soldiers all took out their weapons, jumped off the warship, and rushed towards the Shawu revolutionary warship. Tens of thousands of people rushed to kill, very terrifying, like 10,000 horses galloping, and the monstrous murderous aura seemed to be able to tear everything in front of him apart, and the momentum was very amazing. Roar! Whitebeard jumped off the warship, shaking a terrifying impact, looking at the navy that rushed to kill. His expression was extremely excited. The big knife in his hand was raised, and an air pressure shield appeared on the blade. Whitebeard, your opponent is us. Carp and Zephyr appeared in front of Whitebeard. I'm waiting for you. Naginata, Shuin. Quote. The Shawu revolutionary army all stayed on the ship to defend. Don't go down and fight. Quote. And Fan said coldly, he wouldn't do it with 2,000 and nearly 50,000 people. This is not 2 levels at all. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? At this moment, a voice sounded faintly from Anfan's side. Anfan looked at the ruffian-looking yellow ape who appeared in front of him and raised his shiny left foot to kick him, and his eyes narrowed. Boom! Anfan's whole person was knocked out, and the whole person was thrown directly on the thick ice, and the force of the impact made the hard ice directly cut out the human-sized ravine. Blood poured out of Anfan's head. Glitter fruit. Anfan appeared in front of him again with a cold face, and his hands in his pants didn't care about the yellow ape. That's right, flash the fruit. Quote. The yellow ape ruffian said, and after finishing speaking, the light-like leg kicked directly on Anfan's head, and the huge impact directly kicked his head out of 100 meters away. Yo, I accidentally kicked my head off. You were really too vulnerable, son of sin, Magma fruit. When the yellow ape saw that his head was kicked away, he subconsciously thought that he had killed Anfan, but when he saw it, Anfan's corpse was bubbling with boiling magma all over his body. The flash fruit ability is really good. It's so fast that I didn't even react. Quote. Anfan's head condensed on the corpse, and the whole person looked at the yellow ape angrily. After speaking, without waiting for the yellow ape to react, the burning and boiling magma punched the yellow ape. Phew. Quote. The yellow ape turned into an aurora and flashed into the sky, and said with a smile, you can't hit the light. Belch. Quote. Before the words were finished, the yellow ape's smug expression froze, and Anfan on the ground disappeared without knowing what. Monkey, I'm behind you. Quote. The yellow ape was startled, and just wanted to move. A terrifying blow came from behind, and the whole person immediately turned into a meteor and exploded on the ice, and the entire ice surface instantly concave, a terrifying dense crack. What about the speed? The glitter fruit straight line flash theorem, I know where your position is. Quote. Anfan held an iron forefinger made of Halu stone in his hand, and said coldly. It's best not to ignore my existence. Quote. Qingzi was expressionless, standing in front of Anfan and said. Vice Admiral Youth, the future admiral of the Navy, eats the world's top devil fruit, frozen fruit. Anfan Rao has an interesting taste. You killed him for me. Quote, "Ah," and Fan shook the memory in his mind and said with a smile, "You were the existence that made me look up at the beginning." Qingzi glanced at Fan with complicated eyes. The weak boy had become a figure who could almost follow a shawl in a short period of time. "It's really impermanent. In half a year, you already have such terrifying strength and have done so many earth-shattering things. Why would you betray the world government when the future of the world government is promising?" And Fan spread his hands and said, "I can't help it. I don't want to betray the world government. It's just that the world government wants me to die, so I have to raise my hand to fight back." Quote, "Why is there too much evil and too much injustice in this world itself? Why can the nobles of the world enjoy the privileges of the high, while the civilians throw their corpses into the wilderness, and there is no guarantee of life outside? Why do you Navy help the nobles of the world like a dog, instead of helping the civilians who need to help? Have you all forgotten where your roots are?" And Fan said. Qingzi listened with a complicated face. "Qingzi, I know that you have justice in your heart. Come to my Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. Only in this way can you carry forward the justice in your heart." Quote, and Fan invited Qingzi and said, "He still has a good impression of the righteous youth in the Navy who can stick to his principles." Qingzi stretched out his right hand, a hand covered with frost, and the whole arm revealed a chill, as if it could descend the air and condense into ice. "I'm not the same person as you. We're enemies now, let's fight. Let me experience with my own hands how far you have become of this demon." Quote, "Are you rejecting me?" And Fan asked indifferently. "Once I do it, I won't show mercy." Quote, "Come on." Quote, "Actually, if you want to fight, then I will fight. If you die at my hands, don't blame me." Quote, and Fan said with a cold face. Qingji showed a smile, but this smile was full of iron and blood. Qingzi's right hand grabbed in front of him, and the 4 ice spears condensed, exuding bursts of cold air. Boom, boom, the sound of air raids is coming straight to Anfan. Lanzhou, Lunhua. Quote, and Fan snorted coldly, kicked and slashed the air, directly smashing the 4 ice spears into pieces, turning them into countless pieces of broken ice. Boom, and Fan clenched his iron fist, and the speed was only a blink of an eye, and it hit the front of Qingji. The childish body pays layers of frost, like the armor of an ancient general, wrapping itself. Boom, quote, and Fan's fist slammed into the ice armor on Qingji's body, and the terrifying power only shattered countless hideous cracks. "Watch out for your back," Qingzi said coldly. 5 icy chills were extremely fast, and the sharp sound of breaking the air hit Fan. "Huh," and Fan swept his gaze and saw 5 icicles appear in front of him, instantly freezing his entire person and becoming an ice sculpture. "Ice blades." Quote, Qingzi appeared in front of Fan, with a cold face, and spit out a breath of cold air from his mouth, which directly formed a sharp ice knife to slash Fan, who was frozen into an ice sculpture. Boom, just as the ice blade was about to be cut, the ice sculpture suddenly shattered, and a magma-burning hand blasted out the ice blade with a boiling hot temperature. "Do you think you're going to kill me?" And Fan's whole body was burning with billowing black smoke, and his whole body exuded a stuffy and suffocating breath, and his pupils shrank and said in a cold voice. After speaking, he punched Qingzi hard. "Magma fruit, have you copied the abilities of the Red Inu?" asked Qingzi with a frown. Qingzi's right hand was covered with cold ice cubes, and he directly grasped Fan's burning and boiling magma attack, and the terrifying cold, boom, turned the magma into ice cubes. As long as the temperature is high, magma can overcome ice cubes, and ice cubes can also overcome magma. "Didn't Akainu tell you?" And Fan smiled coldly, his right arm shook, the frozen ice broke and disintegrated, and the ferocious burning punch directly shattered the childish frozen arm, and with a bang, stirred the surrounding heat wave, forming an extremely fast whirlpool, and the punch directly hit the childish body. Boom, the fiery and terrifying temperature directly broke half of the body of the ice cube of the young child, and the terrifying temperature directly evaporated the cold breath. "Magma restrains the ice, I can kill you without being domineering." Quote, "I'm asking you once, are you willing to join our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army?" And Fan said coldly, "For this young child, it is best to join them. If you don't want to, then I'm very sorry." 8-foot mirror. Quote, just as Fan was about to smash Qingzi's head, the voice of the yellow ape suddenly came from behind him. "Ha," and Fan made a move in his hand, and his eyes looked behind him coldly. Boom. I saw a trace of blood flowing from the corner of the yellow ape's mouth. He closed his hands, and the golden light gathered in his palms, followed by countless projectiles of light, and blasted towards and Fan with the sound of aurora. Garbage tricks. Quote. And Fan looked at the projectile of light like a rainstorm, the corners of his mouth rose slightly, and he said sarcastically. Phew. Quote. An aurora flash suddenly sounded from his side. And Fan's face changed instantly, his eyes flashed violently, and this guy struck the west with a voice. You want to save him? And Fan roared, jumped into the air with one foot, turned his body, and burned terrifying magma violently in his right foot, and the ice cubes below directly dissolved in this effect. Arashi, magma. Quote. A red blazing magma slashed through the air and kicked out instantly, directly melting the ice into a layer of water under the terrifying heat wave. Phew. Quote. The yellow ape grabbed Qingzi's shoulder, turning into a golden light that flashed several meters away. It was at this moment that the magma slash arrived, but unfortunately it was a step too slow and hit the ice. Boom. A monstrous explosion rang out, and the ice within 10 meters dissolved into seawater under the terrifying heat wave that erupted. Phew. The yellow ape grabbed Qingzi and appeared a few meters away. Phew. Quote. The yellow ape put down his childishness and gasped. This person's strength is really terrifying. The huge force transmitted through the 4 fingers of Heilu Shitai directly injured my internal organs. Is this guy's strength a freak? He has not been domineering and armed. If he is armed, how terrifying it is. Quote. Speaking of this, the yellow ape couldn't help but scold. Why is this guy's strength so strong? He has reached this point in half a year. Does the copy fruit have such a powerful power? Or is this guy actually not a human, but a monster? The ice cubes in Qingzi's body condensed again, the elementalization was lifted, and the sharp pain from his left hand made his brows furrow. What's wrong? His ability to copy the Akainu magma fruit probably hurt my arm. Qingzi grabbed his right arm with his left hand and frowned. Ha! The yellow ape was stunned. Can you still fight? Said the yellow ape with a frown. Yes. Quote. All right, this guy is a bit non-human, why don't we join forces and flank him? The yellow ape said. He did not feel at all despicable and shameless about his words, but took it for granted. Didn't the marshal just want the 2 of them to attack this kid? Okay. Qingzi hesitated, then nodded. You're left, I'm right. Quote. After the yellow ape finished speaking, the whole person instantly turned into an aurora flash and disappeared. According to his ability, it should be flying in the sky. Flanking. And Fan saw through the 2 of them at a glance, and smiled coldly, revealing a hint of sarcasm. Also the future admiral, garbage. Phew. Quote. Suddenly, in the air above and Fan, a golden figure flashed, and with a touch of his hands, he wiped out a golden long sword and went straight down. The moment the yellow ape appeared, and Fan had already felt it. Seeing his sword attacking him, and Fan smiled disdainfully, and the 2nd generation ghost on his waist instantly slashed out, blocking the surging and heavily slashed Tiankong cloud sword. Boom. The collision of the 2 swords directly provoked a terrifying impact, and the ice blocks around their feet cracked, turning into countless ice stones of different sizes. Oh, good swordsmanship. Quote. And Fan felt the pressure of the 2nd generation ghost and was a little shocked. This yellow ape, which was evaluated by Z in the theater version as relying on the ability of the devil fruit, has a sword technique that makes him feel pressure, which is really incredible. Could it be that his swordsmanship is too inferior? What do you mean? Don't underestimate me. Tightly pressed the Tiankong cloud sword, and said to Fan with a cold face. The swordsmanship he was proud of was actually underestimated, and before he ate the flash devil fruit, he had always practiced swordsmanship in the Navy. Now that he is being despised, isn't this contempt for the sweat he once paid? Ha! Quote. And Fan felt a burst of anger in the yellow ape's heart, chuckled, and a powerful force shook, and the 2 of them shook one after another. Ding, ding, ding. A few rounds of sword collision burst out with huge energy destroying everything around them, and within the range of the 2 of them, not a single piece of ice under their feet was intact, and all of them were torn apart. Compress the air-conditioned bullet. Quote. A cold cheer came, and Qingzi made a move. I saw a cold light released and shot straight towards Fan. Where he went, one side was extremely frozen. Ha! Feeling the terrifying cold power, Fan frowned, and took back the sword technique that oppressed the yellow ape. Yellow ape, let me show you what swordsmanship is. Quote. And Fan snorted coldly, holding the second-generation ghost Che tightly, and a terrifying light slashed out. Boom! Suddenly, as soon as the light came into contact with the ground, the terrifying light split the entire ice surface into a deep hook, splitting the ice in half, and slamming straight towards the flying cold light. Boom! The impact of the earth-shattering explosion shook the entire battlefield, and a cold chill swept through the area, and the ice pieces that had been shattered by the battle between Fan and Huang Yuan were once again reunited. On the other side of the battlefield. Boom! The air cracked, and the powerful tearing impact directly knocked Carp and Z back a few steps. Several meters of hard ice ground directly stepped on a crack, and around them there were countless deep ravines, as if this area could collapse at any time. He really deserves to be the strongest man in the world. Carp clenched his fists and looked at Whitebeard with a broadsword on his face full of excitement. Whitebeard, the power of your shock fruit is terrifying. Quote. Z's armed color-hardened fist was cancelled domineeringly, and he rubbed his wrist and said, "Goo la la la, you two are powerful, under my full blow, it was just a shock to retreat, and others were directly killed by my blow." Whitebeard said. Whitebeard's full force blow is added to the domineering spirit of the overlord color and the power of the fruit, and the people who can be blocked in the world are not more than 2 hands at all, and the attack power can be seen to be terrifying. In particular, the strength of these 2 people who can block this knife is even more terrifying, and they can only be shocked back a few steps under the strongest attack of the strongest man in the world, and their arms are numb. Yellow Ape and Qingji, the 2 top natural ability fruiters, were actually suppressed. Carp casually swept the battlefield on Anfan's side, and his eyeballs were instantly shocked. Carp's words immediately attracted Whitebeard and Z, and they looked over. At this time, in addition to the fierce fight together, a large amount of blood and stumps of the Navy and the Shawu Revolutionary Army, Sora's eyes were also attracted. What's the matter? Yellow Ape and Qingzi were actually suppressed by this son of Sin. The empty brow furrowed. Has this Fan grown up to this point? Who else will be his opponent in the future? No, this time we must be killed. There will be no future trouble. There was a hint of murderous intent in his empty eyes, and the white navy trench coat fluttered slightly. The empty eyes suddenly froze, and his face was gloomy as he looked at the Whitebeard who appeared in the way leading to the Anfan battlefield. What do you want to do, Marshal Sora? Do you want to go into battle yourself? Whitebeard laughed. Phew. The yellow ape flashed upwards, his hands crossed and placed together, and 2 dazzling golden rays of light shot up. 8-foot Chong Hook Jade. In an instant, countless golden light bullets were scattered, attacking Fan like a raging storm, and the ferocious and dense attacks directly shattered the frozen sea below. This move can be the strongest attack of the yellow ape, and the scale is also the largest attack, which is his mystery. The speed of light was too terrifying, and Fan was directly hit by the whole body, and was directly aroused by countless magma streams. The yellow ape frowned slightly. Magma elementalization. Relax a little and you'll run into the sky again, what a hassle for the glittering fruit. Fan said with a cold face, and the small cave of magma that was dense all over his body burned magma, and his whole body was compounded. Your ability to copy fruits is the problem. Quote. The yellow ape retorted coldly, copying the magma fruit of the red dog, it can be elementalized, and it can't hurt him at all without domineering. And his domineering is only half. Especially since this kid can also copy the ability, he has to be careful to beware of it. It's a lot of trouble. Shaving. Quote. Ice cubes, 2 thorn spears. Quote. The remnant of Qingzi appeared beside Fan. His whole body was extremely cold, with suffocating ice cubes, and 2 spears froze the air and attacked Fan. Fan's pupils shrank, the temperature of the magma in his body scorched, and his right arm turned into a boiling magma arm and counterattacked at Qingzi. Boom. Extreme cold versus extreme heat. The ice heat wave that erupted on both sides formed thick ice blocks and dissolved frozen seawater on both sides. For a moment, the sea was boiling with a scorching smell and the ice was exuding a cold breath. Qingzi's cheeks were a little red from the blazing heat. He snorted coldly, the boiling sea water under his feet began to freeze, and his own terrifying cold began to frantically suppress Fan. Fan raised his head slightly, watching the frozen ice under his feet stick, and suddenly chuckled. Thick black smoke came out of Fan's body, and he turned his whole body into hot magma, shaking away the youth with a single blow. Big Spitfire. Quote, and Fan snorted coldly, and a huge lava fist attack composed of lava struck out, and all the terrifying attacks directly hit Qingji. Boom, boom, boom. A blazing shock heat wave erupted, and the entire 100-meter range of ice was swallowed up by the terrifying wave of fire. The ice melts, the sea boils, and a sea of magma fire. Yo, that's terrible. The yellow ape's pupils shrank in surprise as he looked at the magma on the surface of the sea below, and he could feel the boiling breath from such a high distance. It was so scary that he wanted to go to the toilet now. Monkey, you don't speak properly, you can go too. Quote. A cold snort sounded behind the yellow ape. The yellow ape's pupils suddenly shrank, and the ruffian's face showed a trace of horror. When, boom, the whole person was directly smashed into the magma sea below like a meteor, shaking up the roaring magma waves. Boo! Blocking the white beard of the three of them, he glanced at the situation on and Fan's side, and saw that he suppressed the ability of the two natural top fruits, and immediately laughed. Sora's face was incomparably dark. There's nothing. Sora scolded with a cold face, not knowing who he was scolding. Marshall, don't be so angry, eat some donuts. The yellow ape is still very strong, but they have encountered the demon and Fan. Carp took 2 packets of donuts out of his pocket, one for himself and one for Empty. Indeed, Huang Yuan and Qingzi are very strong, and their strength is close to that of a general, but when they encounter the demon and Fan, they will fight so badly. You must know that Fan believes in the coexistence of force and wisdom, and he generally takes 1 step at a time and sees 3 steps. He knows that he may be against these tricky natural abilities, and he is not domineering. So he prepared the Halu stone early in case of emergency. If Fan had domineering, Yellow Ape and Qingzi would be killed by him directly, instead of the embarrassing situation where they can't be killed, and they can't be injured if they are seriously injured. Domineering has become a huge gate rail for Fan to step onto the world pyramid. If he can't pass it, even if the combat power is terrifying, it is useless. Sora looked at the donut in his hand, and his face instantly turned like black charcoal. Get out! Sora rage slammed straight into Carp. Whitebeard, I don't want to do anything with you, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid. I'll say it again, get out of the way. Sora shouted at Whitebeard with murderous intent. Boom! Quote. Whitebeard directly shook the huge ice cube in half with the line behind him, for the battlefield on both sides, and he also meant that if he wanted to go over and get me first. The empty fist suddenly clenched, and a green tendon of the word rose angrily. Good. Quote. Sora gritted his teeth and said angrily, his feet suddenly forced, and the ice under his feet immediately dented dense spider cracks, as if they were about to burst at any time. Carp, one of you, go and kill that son of sin for me, and get those 2 fools out. Quote. Kong shouted coldly. Zephyr, go ahead. I don't want to fight with this little hairy boy, although the strength is good, but for me, it's still not good. He didn't awaken domineering at all. Carp said, digging his nostrils and eating a donut. Z looked at Carp with black lines on his face. You mean, your strength is stronger than mine? Of course. Carp looked arrogant, and the boogers in his hands were flicked, and the black boogers crossed elegantly in the cold eyes. Empty. Carp, are you looking for death? Sora slammed his fist into Carp's head. Zephyr, you go and kill the son of sin. Carp, you and I will have the strongest man in the world. Kong Lang looked at Whitebeard coldly and said. The surrounding air collided with terrifying killing intent, stirring up an icy aura. Whitebeard raised his broadsword and said coldly, I won't let you pass. Quote. Naginata, god of war. Don't pretend to be dead, you know you're okay. Quote. Fan levitated in the sky and said coldly. He doesn't have the ability to kill Qingzi and Yellow Ape yet, they can all be elementalized, and he can't do it without domineering. Ah! With a cold drink, a cold air swept up, and the 100-meter violently boiling and burning magma instantly turned into ice cubes, freezing the blazing temperature with absolute cold. Yo, it's really troublesome to deal with you. Quote. The Yellow Ape and Qingzi stood side by side, looking indifferently at Fan in the sky. It turns out that you can't be domineering, it's really scaring me. If we have domineering, we probably will be done with it. The top is full of domineering magma, and the sea of devil fruits is restrained below, and it is difficult not to die. 0, 0, 0, the Yellow Ape looked at Fan and said mischievously. At first, they all thought that the strength of this demon was so terrifying, so domineering would definitely be, but they didn't expect that a battle would be fought, except for the natural restraint of the childish, Halushi striking the yellow ape, there was nothing else. And Fan fell to the ground, and when he heard this, he chuckled lightly, and said helplessly, "Who told you to be ruthless? I didn't say that I would be domineering, but all of you thought I would be domineering, hey. Don't be so smart, okay? No matter how smart you are, you can't change the IQ you have with the pigs, I forgot. You grew up in the pigsty." Quote. And Fan scolded people without leaving his mouth, without the consciousness of a strong man. Some were just scoundrels in the market, and directly opened his mouth that others were pigs. Hearing and Fan's words, Chingzi and Yellow Ape were stunned for a moment, and their faces turned blue in an instant. "Oh, then, aren't I the pig's teacher?" At this moment, a chuckling voice came. "I saw a middle-aged man with purple hair, wearing a purple suit, wearing an admiral's windbreaker, and a resolute face." And Fan's expression changed instantly, and he subconsciously swept Whitebeard's side, and saw Whitebeard following the sky, and Carp hit the sky darkly, causing very terrifying damage. The Admiral Sora has finally made a move. No wonder. And Fan squinted his eyes and looked at the middle-aged man who was walking slowly with his hands in his hands, and in an instant he felt as if a raging and terrifying beast was strolling towards him. This man's strength is terrifying. And Fan defined in his heart. One of the two major admirals at present, the Black Wrist, Admiral Zephyr. And Fan said in a deep voice. "Teacher." The yellow ape and the young boy shouted obediently. "General Zephyr, I prefer other generals." Quote. General Z said with a chuckle. Z. And Fan's face flashed with a hint of complexity. If there is anyone who is the most in One Piece, it must be this Z general. A lifetime of selfless dedication to the justice in his heart. As a result, his wife and son were killed by pirates, and later his right arm was cut off, and later the pirate who cut off his right arm entered the Seven Martial Seas, and in the theater version, he was severely injured and killed by his disciple Yellow Ape. It can be said that the life of this Z general is full of considerable tragedies. For the sake of justice in his heart, the man who can bury hatred in his heart, the young man said it at the end of the theater version. This is a real man. Is also a character that an fan likes very much. Your name is Z, aren't you going to teach students, why are you still leading the army? And Fan asked General Z. According to the plot, after his family was killed, he didn't become a general, he went to be an instructor and train students. Chingzi, Huang Yuan, and Akainu are among his students, and Tina, who is in the fortress, is also his student. The instructor of the Naval Military Academy is my main job, and the admiral is my part-time job. General Z said with a smile. Really? And Fan squinted at General Z, his eyes full of jealousy. Although this man doesn't know how he was cut off by someone else's right arm, it is certain that General Z's strength is absolutely terrifying, and the pirate who cut off his right arm is even more terrifying. He should be careful with General Z. Because now this Z general is at the peak, his right arm has not been cut off, and his strength is even more terrifying, and he can almost stand shoulder to shoulder with Carp and the Warring States. Sengoku can hit him hard with one of his strongest attacks, and the Z award may not be impossible. Why are you so scared of me? Didn't you just hit me hard? General Z felt and Fan's solemnity domineeringly, so he said with a smile. I'm not afraid, I'm cautious. And Fan said coldly. General Z, you might as well join our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. And Fan suddenly said such a sentence to General Z. When the young man and the yellow ape in the back heard this, one frowned directly, and the other directly mocked. Son of Sin, don't dream, how can the teacher join your organization that is about to fall? When General Z heard An Fan's words, he was slightly stunned, but he didn't expect An Fan to suddenly invite him to join the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. This is like a beggar who suddenly invites a rich man to become a beggar with him. Hearing the sarcasm of the yellow ape, An Fan glanced at him coldly, and suddenly raised his finger, and a terrifying beam of light shot out, and the same characteristic directly knocked the yellow ape flying. Chingzi and Z will stay at once, that's not. Is the yellow ape's ability to shine. And Fan looked at them and said with an evil smile. Just now, I'm sorry, I got your blood and copied your abilities, the three major admirals of the future navy, magma, ice, and flash abilities, I already have them. Quote. Hearing this, Chingzi's pupils shrank, when did he also bleed? Suddenly, I suddenly remembered something, and I looked at the fact that there was already a trace of coagulated blood on my right arm, and my pupils contracted rapidly in an instant, and it turned out that I was injured at that time. General Z, I appreciate your justice. You join our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. And Fan invited General Z very sincerely. Recruit me, hee, do you have the strength? General Z was slightly stunned, and then smiled lightly. He had also seen Sha Wu's revolutionism, was accustomed to the darkness of the world, and was very much in favor of what was inside. It's just that it's just in favor, but he knows it's very unrealistic. What kind of strength is needed to overthrow the world government and establish a new government? If Enfankin deliberately hides and develops for a few years, and has the strength to deal with the impact of the world government and raises this banner, it is very likely that the world government will be overthrown with this kid's demonic nature. However, although it is demonic, it is still too tender. Attracting the attention of the world government so quickly, and issuing such a powerful lineup to conquest orders, everything will disappear in the face of this combat force. What's more, even if it doesn't attract the Navy to conquer it, it will be very difficult to achieve it if it has enough power to overthrow the world government. Because what is the greatest original sin in the world? Greedy. What are the drivers of greed? Power, wealth, beauty. Neither. It's power. If people have no strength, do they dare to do things that they dare not do? They don't dare. However, the world has domineering, devil fruits, swordsmanship, and various physical skills, and human strength is destined to exceed the limit. When a person has more strength than ordinary people, will he be satisfied with living the same life status as ordinary people? Therefore, the ideal is very full, but the reality is very cruel. If you want to truly establish the legal system and peace empire mentioned in Sha Wuism, it is very difficult. What's more, the bigger the trouble, the more people will die. In this case, it is better to make Sha Wu revolutionism an unrealistic dream. Strength, do you mean individual strength, or overall strength? And Fan squinted and said. Guess what? Quote, General Z laughed, and the iron fist in his hand was pinched, and the air was pinched and crackled. I'm here to kill you, and if I talk to you, my boss won't be satisfied. General Z said with a smile, and there was a deep sense of anger in his smile. It's a pity. Quote, and Fan said with a pity on his face. I returned your dear relatives to be killed. You have been disappointed in the Navy, the world government, and this dark world. I didn't expect you to be so calm. You were really a husband in vain, a father in vain. Quote, what did you say? General Z's face changed. His face turned blue, and his whole body exuded an astonishing murderous aura, as if his reverse scales had been touched. I ask you, what did you just say? Z roared as he took a step forward with anger on his face, and with a kick, a terrifying crack appeared in the hard ice on the ground, and it quickly spread in all directions. I said that your relatives died under the sword of the pirates. Why don't you go and help them take revenge? And why did the Navy help you? The world government didn't help you, and as a Navy admiral, don't you even have this privilege? And Fan shouted. Shut up, I'm for the righteousness of my heart. Admiral Z yelled that the tragic death of his wife and son had always been a pain in his heart, so he gave up his position as admiral and went to the academy to become a teacher. What is your justice? Asked and Fan curiously. He always wanted to know what the justice of these navies was, and he shouted this slogan every day. Justice is. Yes. General Z subconsciously wanted to say it, but he was suddenly stunned. What was the justice he shouted? Hee, don't you know? General Z, if you join my Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, I will tell you what justice is. Quote. And Fan shouted bewildermently, for General Z, he really didn't want to give up. Phew. Quote. A golden light flashed, and the yellow ape appeared in front of Fan, and he kicked at the speed of light and said, Justice is to kill the pirates and deal with your crimes. Quote. Joke, it's not your duty to kill pirates. And Fan sneered and said, his body flashed, and he who had copied the ability of the flash fruit could completely avoid the yellow ape's light speed kick. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? And Fan sneered and said to the yellow ape, he couldn't be caught off guard by this move before, and now he wants to report it back. What did you say? The yellow ape was slightly stunned when he heard Fan say the familiar words, and at this moment, a flash kick came, which was Fan's light speed kick. Experience what it's like to be kicked at the speed of light. And Fan said in a cold voice. As soon as the words fell, the yellow ape turned into a golden light, and the whole person didn't know where, and Fan, who was angry, was kicked. The ability to flash is more proficient than the yellow ape. Quote. General Z said coldly. General Z, if you are really disappointed in the Navy and the world government in the future, come to me, the door of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army will be open at any time. Quote. Seeing that General Z had changed a little, and Fan had no choice but to finally say, it seems that is really going to wait for his arm to be cut off, and he will only feel disappointed after that enemy joins the 7 Marshall Seas. Hey, you'll have to wait a lot of years. But it doesn't matter, as long as this Z general is willing to join, no matter what time it is, it's okay. HMPH. The Sha Wu Revolutionary Army will become history today, and you will also be history. General Z roared. With a roar, the 2 arms were directly armed with color hardening, attacking and Fan, and the entire surrounding air flow was stirred up at extreme speed. As this armed color hardening, and Fan frowned, he felt the danger from these 2 huge iron arms. If he hit it hard, the one on his body could not withstand it, especially the fatal one. It was estimated that he would be killed directly. And Fan clasped his hands together, and a golden long sword appeared. That monkey's heavenly cloud sword is actually on par with my 2nd generation ghost, and I don't know how powerful it is. Quote. You have a sword, why don't you use it? Relying on fruit ability is very bad, let me teach you a good lesson today. Quote. General Z slammed into front of and Fan, roared with anger on his face, and as he spoke, a huge iron fist slammed down. Boom! A powerful thud rang out. And Fan held the sky from the cloud sword to resist the heavy pressure of the iron fist, and the powerful giant force and domineering impact directly shattered the ice under and Fan's feet. A trace of bright red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The combat power beyond the general level, and the combat power at the general level is so terrifying. Boy, let me teach you. General Z said wildly with his iron fist raised. Pieces of iron, crushing punches. Quote. Immediately, a domineering punch broke through the air and hit and Fan fiercely. Ha! Without hesitation, and Fan directly turned into a streamer and flew into the sky. HMPH, do you think I can't do anything about it? General Z sneered. He was the teacher of the yellow ape, and he knew everything about the ability to flash. The yellow ape was taught by General Z, so the yellow ape was very dissatisfied with General Z. Of course, General Z's original intention was to let the yellow ape not rely too much on the devil fruit ability, but the yellow ape didn't listen to and misinterpreted General Z's painstaking efforts, and the 2 became less and less likely to deal with each other, and the 2 became farther and farther apart, causing the yellow ape to kill General Z in the original book. Immediately, the powerful, terrifying heavy punch suddenly opened its 5 fingers, grabbed the air, and directly tore it, turning the power of one punch into a domineering slash to break through to and Fan. What? And Fan watched the domineering slash from below, his pupils shrank. Boom! A violent explosion sounded in midair, and the powerful force directly hit the ground and the ice shattered in all directions. I didn't want your life, it's really big. Quote. General Z looked coldly at an Fan who was covering his mouth in front of him. It's not enough to kill me, but it's enough to hurt me. And Fan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He felt very uncomfortable being attacked by domineering. This is the 2nd time, the first is the Warring States. The Warring States almost killed him that time, but this time I don't know what happened, it was only a minor injury. I don't know if my strength has become stronger, or if General Z has shown mercy. General Z's move just now was a full blow. And Fan took a deep look at General Z, and then slowly stood up. This light injury is not very serious, and it can be healed in a few minutes after recovering the fruit ability, and the heavy one is the pain caused by the domineering hit elementalization. Although you eat the replica fruit, you can copy a lot of devil fruit abilities, but don't rely too much on the power of the fruit, the strength still comes from itself is better. Quote. General Z Zhang shook his armed hardened iron fist and said to an Fan. General Z, your strength is too strong, I will collide with you at all, if you do this, I will be torn to pieces by you. Quote. And Fan chuckled, his fingers shone with golden light, and the beam of light flew out, penetrating the air, and instantly came to the front of General Z, and struck down. Boom, boom, boom. In just 2 seconds, General Z suffered from Infan's radium, which produced an astonishing explosion and engulfed General Z. Boom! In the golden explosion energy, a figure jumped out and rushed towards Infan with an iron fist. This attack won't hurt me, General Z said with a cold smile. 8-foot mirror. Quote. Infan said indifferently, looking at General Z who came from the violent attack. His hands were closed up and down, a golden light flashed, and the whole person directly turned into golden light, directly behind General Z, stopped in midair, and kicked towards the golden light. Ha! General Z frowned slightly, and before he could react, an impact came from his back, and the whole person instantly smashed into the ice below, and the ice collapsed directly under this impact and fell into the seawater. Teacher. The young man on the side looked shocked. Phew. Quote. A golden light flashed, appearing behind Qingji, and Infan sneered. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Said Anfin in the yellow ape's light omen mantra. Qingji's face was ugly, and a thick layer of ice instantly formed all over his body. He knew that no matter how fast he was, he couldn't run out, and he could only hope that the defense could withstand Infan's kick. Boom! Just as Infan was about to kick Qingji, the ice below suddenly cracked, and a giant fist smashed up. Ha! Infan raised his eyebrows, the kick suddenly leaked, and the entire flash retreated a few meters away, and his hands pressed to the ground. Ice Age. Quote. Extreme coldness emanated from Infan's body, and the ice under his feet suddenly formed a layer, and the broken ice blocks around him regrouped, and he seemed to freeze that hand, making General Z stuck in the ice. Boy, do you think this is the end of my life? The sound of General Z's wild laughter came, followed by the sound of countless cracking ice cubes, and the reassembled ice cubes split again, and the terrifying cracks were like countless lightning and thunder that appeared in the range of hundreds of meters of ice. This Z general actually used his armed force to break a 100-meter-long ice block and boulder, which was extremely terrifying. Infan jumped into the air, crossed his hands, and 2 golden lights shone brightly. 8-foot Chongyu. Quote. With a loud shout, countless golden dazzling light bombs were launched, frantically hitting the cracked ice blocks below, and for a while, all the ice blocks suffered a devastating attack, and all the broken ice within 100 meters hit the seawater, and there was a booming explosion, and the seawater was almost all golden light explosions. Boy, you're still weak. Quote. General Z's voice came, and a black bullet retrograde pierced through countless light bullets and came to Infan at great speed. Finger guns. Of. Poof. 0. Quote. Infan's right arm was directly penetrated, and there was no elementalization of golden light, only dripping blood. In an instant, the severe pain made Infan stop the big move in his hand, covered his right arm and disappeared into a flash of golden light, and rushed directly to Whitebeard, who was fighting fiercely with Kong and Carp. At this time, Whitebeard's face was covered with blood, and his whole body was also wounded, and Carp and Sora were similar. They were all wounded, and the battle between the 3 of them was very fierce, and several warships were destroyed because of their battles. Let's go. Infan looked at Whitebeard and said deeply, then grabbed Whitebeard and flashed away, coming to one of the 3 Sha Wu revolutionary warships left in the tragic fight. Boom. Infan smashed several red-eyed sailors who rushed towards him with a finger. Now we retreat, withdraw to the fortress. We retreated, withdrew to the fortress. Quote. Infan's cold voice spread throughout the battlefield, and the battlefield fought for a slight discharge, and then stirred up 1,000 waves like a stone. They're going to run, and they must not be allowed to run. Quote. Hurry up, stop them, don't let them run. Quote. These guys are finally scared and can't let them go. Quote. Kill all these crimes, what Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, let me all become history. Quote. All the Navy roared angrily, because Infan ordered the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army to defend on the ship, so they attacked like a siege, except for some people who were proficient in the 6 naval styles, the rest basically had to climb up. With such a shameless tactic of attacking and defending, they naturally suffered large losses when attacking this side, and it took a lot of effort to finally eliminate only 3 Sha Wu Revolutionary warships, and now that the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army is about to escape, how can they tolerate that the duck that is about to be cooked is about to fly? You must know that because of the fanaticism of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, they have to pull a backpad before the temporary madness, which makes them suffer heavy losses. They had more than 3,000 naval officers killed, more than 30 rear admirals and 3 lieutenant generals died. Therefore, they now want to kill all the Shawu Revolutionary Army without leaving a single one, and then kill all the people in the fortress city, so as to calm the fire of grief and anger in their hearts. Kill. The Navy soldier's eyes were red, and he stepped on the blood all over the ground and pounced on Anfan. Mole ants. Quote. Anfan snorted coldly, and several laser shots killed them all in an instant. What? Isn't this the ability of Lieutenant General Yellow Ape's fruit? Quote. Anfan's flash ability directly shocked countless naval soldiers, and they didn't understand why this one had the ability of a yellow ape. Anfan didn't dare to surprise these people. He directly flashed his ability to quickly kill the navy of the ship. He had to hurry up and leave quickly, and it would be troublesome for them to react in the air. Sora's face was extremely ugly, and he roared angrily, "Zepha, Carp, don't let the two of them run away." Quote. Whitebeard and Anfan, who left suddenly, made them slightly stunned. The real fight had just begun. Why did they withdraw? Boom. Anfan coldly pointed at the head of a lieutenant general on his own warship, and the warship that was almost captured by the Navy soldiers was directly reversed by Anfan alone. He brutally slaughtered all the hundreds of naval soldiers who came up, like trampling a bunch of ants to death. Everyone immediately mobilized the sails and withdrew to the naval fortress. Anfan shouted coldly, "If you want to start a warship, you have to get rid of the ice first." Whitebeard reminded. Hearing this, Anfan frowned, looking at the frozen seawater. He had forgotten. "Do you need my help?" asked Whitebeard as he slowed down his pressure mask and asked Anfan. Anfan looked at the blood stains on Whitebeard's face. He shook his head and said, "Master, you have done enough, now you can rest and watch a wonderful show." Quote. Anfan wiped a cruel smile on his face, and with the blood on his face, the whole person looked extremely hideous. Phew. A golden light flashed into the sky, and Anfan's whole body burned with magma, and he looked coldly at the naval soldiers below. Seeing this situation, the faces of Kong, Carp, Z, Qingzi and others who caught up changed dramatically. "It's not. All the Navy soldiers immediately get on the nearest ship to them, right away," Sora shouted angrily. The naval soldiers were a little dazed, not knowing why the Admiral Sora said this, but the nature of the soldiers made them choose to obey and run to the nearest warship. At this moment, Anfan clenched his right fist and roared angrily, and a terrifying magma swung upward. "Meteor volcano." Quote. "Childish," Sora yelled with an ugly face. "Understood." Qingzi nodded solemnly, and his whole body immediately exuded an icy chill, which made the ice on the surface of the sea even more cold. Boom. There was a shocking magma sound. The entire sky was dark red, thick black smoke was rolling in the sky, full of suffocation, and countless terrifying magma bombs fell down, like a volcanic eruption. Boom, boom, boom. The ferocious magma with a huge impact force smashed directly into the frozen sea level, shaking the terrifying heat wave impact. Countless ice blocks shattered, and the terrifying high temperature directly dissolved the ice blocks, and a large number of ice blocks disappeared and turned into seawater again. "Ah, no, pull me." Quote. Some of the Navy soldiers who were in the evening were either directly shocked to death by the terrifying impact, or brutally drowned directly by the melting seawater, or were unlucky and directly attacked by magma bombs, and the whole person was reduced to ashes. All the sailors who did not get on board the ship before they were killed, and the sailors who got on board first did not get much benefit. A magma bomb exploded down, and its terrifying impact explosion force could directly destroy the entire warship. In less than a minute, under Anfan's powerful blow, thousands of meters of frozen sea surface were re-liberated, setting off monstrous waves. Bang! Anfan landed on the bow of his warship. His eyes coldly looked at the floating corpses of the naval soldiers and the corpses of the Shawu Revolutionary Army on his side, and the corners of his mouth hooked up a cold smile. Of course, the corpses of these Shawu Revolutionary Army had already been killed by the naval soldiers, and their corpses were lying on the ice, and the ice melted, and naturally floated in the water. "Is this the way you say?" Whitebeard stared blankly at the corpses on the sea, the warship burning with black smoke. This scene made him feel very shocked. This time the Navy died more than 10,000 people. "I haven't started yet, but I didn't expect tens of thousands of people to die before I started." Quote. Speaking of this, Anfan suddenly showed a sneer. His eyes looked at the direction of the Admiral Kong, and he chuckled. "After so many deaths, I guess Kong will be crazy and angry, and the success rate of my method has gone to another level." Quote. Looking at the corpse of the Navy on the surface of the sea, the eyes of the Marshal of the Navy in the air were red. These tens of thousands of elite navies died like this, and his heart was dripping blood. This is the first time since the establishment of the world government that such heavy losses have been made. With red eyes, Empty Blood watched a Sha Wu revolutionary warship slowly depart, heading towards the fortress, as if he saw An Fan standing on that ship, looking at him with a mockery on his face. I'm going to kill this son of sin, kill this little brute. Kill all the Sha Wu revolutionary army. Sora roared angrily, all the warships are chasing, pursuing, I'm going to kill all the Sha Wu revolutionary army. Kill them all. An angry roar echoed across the sea. Hee hee, come on, Sora, does your heart hurt? I will make your heart hurt even more. I will not leave any navy this time, and I will slaughter all 50,000 navy. And Fan looked at the angry Empty with a cruel smile, and his smile was full of endless intrigue abyss. Boom, boom, boom. The naval warships set off, closely chasing after the warship where An Fan was, and under the order of the air, all the warships turned on their heavy guns and fired a salvo roaring. For a while, the sharp sound of the sky roaring through the air was followed by the explosion of water waves. Hee hee, chase it, follow me into the tombstone of your death. Quote. And Fan chuckled, driven by mental power, and several cannonballs that could hit accurately were directly bounced away, exploding and falling around, setting off waves of water. Boom, these cannonballs are spectacular, Whitebeard said, carrying a knife. Looking at the roaring cannonballs, the continuous sound of heavy artillery, and the countless waves of water that exploded around him, Whitebeard was very shocked. This is a naval battle. When he saw tens of thousands of corpses of naval soldiers floating in the sea, Whitebeard had already defined in his heart that this was a war between two countries. Whitebeard even thought again, if An Fan had a warship on his side, and the two of them shelled each other, how shocking would this scene be? Hearing Whitebeard's words, the corners of An Fan's mouth hooked, and he smiled with a beautiful smile. Isn't this beautiful and beautiful? The rise of the First Empire of Sha Wu requires their end. Quote. Former Navy G1 Fortress City, headquarters of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. Dozens of large pirate ships with sea flags were moored outside, and all the pirate ships on them were lying on the railings watching the Navy and the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army fighting in the distance. Hey, what a terrible battle. Quote, it's really embarrassing that there is only one revolutionary warship left in Sha Wu. More than 30 warships dare to challenge the navy of 80 warships. I don't know if it should be said to be arrogant or confident. There is a good fortress that is not defended, and it is actually hard, isn't this death? Who called that son of sin still a child? He still doesn't understand, thinking that he cannot be afraid of heaven and earth with some strength, and he is better to have this time. Quote. How dare you say that about the son of sin? Let him know that you will definitely be thrown into the sea to feed the sea kings. Quote. A group of pirates talked about each other, and one of them directly sneered at An Fan, and as soon as he finished speaking, he was directly scolded by another pirate. The pirate who was mocking An Fan shivered instantly, and he didn't dare to continue speaking. Although they haven't really seen how terrifying Anli is, it can be seen from the fact that they can fight the two great pirate beasts Kaido, Charlotte Ray, who can run rampant above the sea pirates, with the power of one person. It can be seen that this is no longer the object they can provoke. Among them, they were full of incomprehension of the dispatch of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, which was a very stupid decision. If they did, they would directly use the defense of the fortress to defend it, so that there might be a glimmer of life. If An Fan knew what these people thought, he would definitely sneer. If you really do this, it's just a thing. In the face of such a strong lineup, you still want a glimmer of life. What are you kidding? Look, the Sha Wu Revolutionary warship is retreating into the fortress city. Do you think we should go in? Said one of the pirates suddenly. Suddenly, the noisy pirates all fell silent, staring blankly at the pirate, and looking at the pirate sweating profusely. Yes, I forgot, we're under the fortress now, and if we don't run away at once, the navy will be on us. One of the pirates shouted in horror. Let's run now. What are you kidding? The captains are all in the fortress city, and we're leaving. If we don't go right away, we're going to be corpses from naval artillery. Quote. You idiot, can we pirate ships outpace the naval warships? Even if we succeed in escaping, how can we gain a foothold in the new world without the protection of the captain? Quote. What should we do? We can't wait here to die. Quote, you're a pig's brain. The captains are in the fortress, and of course we have to go into the fortress city too. I don't know how you got to the New World. Quote, the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army won't let us in, and if we force it, they may attack us. Quote, that was before, and when is it now? It's a matter of life and death. Don't we dare if they shoot cannons. That son of sin, even if he is powerful, will be afraid of our dozens of pirate captains. The captain will not give us up. Quote, that's right, yes, we're going to ask the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army to let us in, and if they don't let us in, we'll force our way in. We're more than 45 pirates. There are 100,000 people in total, and although most of them didn't come to stay on Daddy Whitebeard's island, there are at least 20,000 people here. Quote, a Sha Wu army commander in the fortress city looked coldly at the group of pirates below, holding a snail communicator in his hand. If you don't let them in, you will force your storm, destroy my fortress, and sink my warship with the navy, and threaten me with such a bold statement. Anfin's voice came from the snail communicator. Yes, leader, are we going to annihilate them on the spot? Said Captain Sha Wu coldly. No, if they're going to come in, let them in, take them to the former naval training ground at the back of the fortress, and don't let these guys get in the way of my plans. Quote, when I finish packing up these navies, I'll come back to settle accounts after the autumn, and you actually threaten me like this. A voice full of anger came. Fear of death is forgivable, as long as it is a person. You are afraid of death, but you should not speak so aggressively and speak to him in a threatening tone. And Fan is a person who only eats soft and never eats hard. Destroying his fortress and sinking him with the navy was a naked challenge to him, and he was now at a very critical juncture, and he had already stepped on his line and angered him. 100 Beasts Kaido, how are they now? And Fan asked Captain Sha Wu in a cold voice, don't make any trouble with this group of guys, otherwise he will turn his face, he is in a very bad mood now. The face of the commander of the Sha Wu army stiffened, and he was a little stumbling. Smack. And Fan's face turned green, and he turned off the snail communicator in his hand. Whitebeard next to him looked stunned, he heard it right. Ha ha ha, looks like it's coming to an end. The 100 Beasts Kaido stood on the edge of the observation room of the fortress city, looking at the distant sea level with excitement as a Sha Wu revolutionary warship appeared first, followed by a large number of naval warships. A wonderful scene is about to be staged. What impact will this Anfin bring to me? I'm really looking forward to it. Quote. Charlotte Lingling also laughed, picked up the cake in her hand and threw it into her mouth. Behind them were piles of corpses, white walls sprinkled with scarlet blood. These two fools, they actually killed them all. Quote. And Fan said with a blue face, 0, 0, 0, he gathered these pirates because it was very useful for TMD, and now they were all killed by the two of them, so that some thoughts in his heart were directly aborted. If you let their subordinates know, I guess they will really send what threats they said. Whitebeard said solemnly. When the time comes, there will be pirates in front and navy in the back, and this will be very troublesome. Quote. And Fan waved his hand indifferently and said, although there are many of them, they are just a large group of ants. When I clean up these navies, I will settle accounts with them. If they are interested, everything is easy to say. If they are not interested, hee, don't blame me. And Fan's eyes flashed with a trace of cold killing intent, and his meaning was very obvious. Whitebeard frowned slightly, although he didn't like this bloody killing in his heart, but he didn't meddle with it. It's his student's own business, so let him do it himself. And he also heard the report of the commander of the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army on the side before, and he was also very angry in his heart. A group of small characters dared to be so arrogant. Did they really think that the tiger fell to Pyongyang and could be bullied at will? Your base is not far ahead, what is your solution? Asked Whitebeard with a frown at Anfan. Until now, he still didn't know what Anfan's method was. You'll find out later. Anfan still had that expression and smiled lightly. Looking at Anfan's calm and confident expression, Whitebeard didn't know what to say. The fire had already burned to his eyebrows, and he was pretending to be unfathomable. Teacher, after you get into the fortress, you have to quickly enter the top position of the fortress, because I am afraid that I will hurt you. Anfan said. Whitebeard was slightly stunned when he heard this, and looked at Anfan with some surprise. What way could he actually hurt him? He's the strongest man in the world. Isn't any conspiracy a joke in the face of absolute strength? Seeing Anfan's expression full of seriousness, Whitebeard nodded, although he was a little puzzled, but Anfan had already said it, then he still obeyed it well, and didn't make some unnecessary trouble. For Whitebeard's obedience, Anfan nodded with satisfaction, and after looking at the base camp that was getting closer and closer, he immediately swept the naval warships that were also getting closer and closer to them. Don't be in such a hurry to die. Anfan sneered, these naval warships are really fast enough, at least twice as fast as ordinary pirate ships. Son of Sin, you have no escape. Do you want to escape into the G1 fortress? Standing on the bow of the warship, with his arms folded in his hands, he looked at Anfan and shouted coldly. Under the absolute justice of the Navy, everything about your so-called Sha Wu Revolutionary Army will become history and be wiped out under the fire of the Navy. Quote, in the name of absolute justice, cleanse you of all your sins. Sora yelled. In the name of absolute justice, clean up the evil. The naval soldiers on the warship roared angrily, and the death of tens of thousands of colleagues in front of them deeply angered them, and their hearts were full of anger and hatred. The voice is loud and very exciting. Anfan said disdainfully, although it was only one person, but his voice suppressed the roar of tens of thousands of navies. This is the strength of the strong. Justice, a group of dogs raised by the world's nobles actually shouted justice, can you be more shameless? Anfan said indifferently, his tone full of contempt. What did you say? Sora's voice instantly became a little louder, his face turned pale, and he roared angrily, actually scolding them for being a group of dogs. What? I have touched your sore spot. Anfan smiled coldly, and he said in a cruel voice, aren't you going to give my head to the world government? Here now, you dogs, come and get it. Dedicated to the 5 old stars, to the world nobles, and to the group of Tianlong people who are no longer human beings with noble blood. Quote. Sora's whole body trembled, and his whole body exuded bursts of anger, and that kind of cold chill wanted to cut Anfan with 1,000 knives. Phew, a bunch of dog minions. Anfan looked at the silent navy and scolded coldly. Once the Draco people are harmed, the highest admiral of the navy will be dispatched. What is this TMD, not a dog? Little brute, if we don't kill you today, and if we don't eradicate your Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, it will be an eternal shame for our navy. The green veins on the empty face burst into thick blood and roared. Shame, this shame is condemned by your navy. Quote, Anfan said coldly, he wants to stay here without missing all the navy that comes to crusade against him, and he wants to let the world know that their Sha Wu First Empire is the next ruling in the world, and they have enough power to overthrow the world government, and if they dare to offend their enemies, they will be killed by them. Then I'm going to see what you can do to make our navy bear this shame. Sora laughed angrily. Do I have the ability? Can you see if you know? Anfan took out the 2nd generation ghost and put it in his hand to weigh it. His fingers lightly swiped the sharp blade, looked at the sky, looked at all the navy, and said with an evil smile. Boy, eat me this trick. Quote, suddenly, there was a roar, and then a huge black ball flew out of a warship, almost covering the sky. Carp, Whitebeard shouted coldly as his face turned gloomy. Underscore. There was a roar, and then a huge black ball flew out of a warship, almost covering a piece of the sky. Carp, you're actually playing sneak attack. Whitebeard shouted coldly, raising his broadsword as if preparing to shatter the ball to pieces. Ha ha, I don't want to, but this kid is a little too much. Carp's laughing voice was heard. Cross slash. Quote, boom. At this moment, Anfan's 2nd sword slashed out, tearing the air with a strong slash, and a blood-red cross sword chi slashed out, slashing the iron ball from the huge iron ball into pieces, and the terrifying sword chi was still powerful and rushed straight towards the naval warship. Boom. A naval warship was instantly cut in half under this attack and sank into the sea. Teacher, you go back to the fortress first. Anfan turned his back to indifference and said. At this time, Anfan's warship was very close to the fortress, only 10 meters away, while the naval warship was 30 meters away, and began to bombard the fortress. The fortress was also counter-attacking. Hundreds of heavy artillery aimed at the naval warship, shells flew in the sky, and a sea fortress battle began. Boom, boom, your method is about to begin, Whitebeard asked as he slowly lowered his broadsword, a little confused. There was nothing else around here except for the fortress, and Whitebeard would not believe that the hundreds of heavy artillery of the fortress could destroy these dozens of naval warships with a total of more than 300 or 400 cannons. That's right. And Fan nodded. Dad, let's go first. Okay. Whitebeard was also very happy, and turned around with his knife and jumped on the fortress city, and quickly ran to the top. He wanted to see how Fan slaughtered these navies. Oh, what are your schemes? Carp rushed to Fan at this time, and when he heard some words, he was shocked in his heart. Want to know? Fan sneered, looking at Carp with a rather cold look in his eyes. If you want to know, come and beat me. Okay, I'll give you a taste of the love fist of the boy. Quote. Kapu raised his fist, and there was a thick overlord domineering aura gathered on it, and said with a smile. Well, I'll try the power of Vice Admiral Carp, the hero of the Navy who cornered Roger. Quote. Fan's eyes narrowed and he said, I'll also see how powerful the children of Sin really are. Carp laughed. Fan snorted coldly, and the next second turned into a streamer and appeared in front of Carp, clenching his fist and slamming it into Carp's stomach. Quote. Carp was directly hit by Fan's punch, and the powerful impact made him take several steps back. Boy, your fist doesn't hurt. Don't you have enough to eat? Do you want me to give you a donut? Carp said with a smile as he touched his stomach, and at some point, his stomach was hardened. Ha, let me take the liberty of asking, have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Fan laughed, and the whole flash appeared above the card, and the speed of light lifted up, and quickly kicked Carp in the head. Boom, Cap's body slammed into the deck, and the entire deck shook out without horror. You kid, don't you know how to be respectful to the old man? Quote. Carp touched his bleeding head. I can't let you go on like this anymore, don't let me really want to. What a naval hero. I hit it with all my might, I didn't expect to look like a nobody. Quote. Fan flashed on the other side and said in a deep voice of surprise. His words were not false, he used all his strength, but he didn't expect Carp to be the same as nothing at all, just a little blood. Boy, if you only have such a little strength, you will probably fall here today. Carp said in a deep voice, I admire you, but the Navy is really angry, and you must die to appease their anger. Quote. Boy, you're talking too much. Quote. As he spoke, Carp's whole body exuded an oppressive domineering aura, which was overlord-colored domineering. Fan frowned, if it weren't for his strong will, otherwise he would have fallen under Carp's overlord domineering. What's the matter? The old man's domineering is good. Carp said with a smile, this is my overlord domineering, only 1 in a million, how about it? I'm very powerful, ha ha ha. Carp laughed heartlessly again, quite different from the previous murderous sentence, it was simply not the same person. If you turn on domineering, then I can't use the natural ability. Quote. Fan looked at Carp and said, Carp is one of the few people who are most proficient in domineering, and if you continue to play Flash or something with him, you will lose your life. You don't use your own advantage, are you going to use a sword? Carp curious. Isn't your nonsense too much? You may not know, my strongest strength is not swordsmanship or anything, but like you, my physical skills are the most powerful. Few pieces of iron, crush. Quote. Fan's figure appeared behind Carp, his fist shining with an air pressure shield, and he punched Carp, but the punch was empty, and it was only Carp's shadow, which smashed the deck to pieces. Haha, boy, you actually copied Whitebeard's shock fruit, that's good. Quote. Carp's whole person's momentum was huge, and he directly raised his fist and blasted at Fan, not afraid that Fan's every punch contained the power of the shock fruit. Two physically powerful figures, colliding with each other, the destructive power is quite terrifying. Boom. Quote. Fan roared and collided with Carp's iron fist, and a suffocating aura exploded, shattering the warship under his feet, and the two of them stepped on the sea. Scratch. The power of the shock directly shook Fan's arm bones, and the whole arm was bloody. On the other hand, Carp didn't do anything at all, the whole arm was hardened, and it was overflowing with the domineering spirit of the overlord color, and the momentum was amazing. It's really unpleasant to fight with you people without domineering, because I can't kill you. Quote. Fan said indifferently, and the wounds on his entire arm that had been injured by domineering chi were recovering their ability and gradually compounding. Resilience, Carp said in surprise. Fan looked at the Navy warship that was getting closer and closer behind Carp, and he had already seen the cold face of the empty standing at the bow of the ship, looking at him coldly. I'm going to kill you this time, Hollow said coldly. Anfin death, he felt that he was 9 out of 10. Hey, and Fan muttered, looking at these navies and showing a strange smile. As he spoke, the second-generation ghost on his waist pulled out, the blade was directly on the palm of his hand, his face was full of hideousness, and he slashed fiercely, and the scarlet blood continued to gush out, sprinkled in the seawater. Boom, boom, the calm seawater suddenly flowed at a strange and eerie speed, full of rapid madness, and the seawater suddenly blew into a storm. What's going on? Said Sora with a frown. How could he hear a strange voice? This voice was so familiar. It's a voice. Carp's eyes suddenly widened, and at this moment, a strong sense of crisis arose in his heart, and his hairs exploded. Not good, dangerous. Years of experience made him leap into the warship. Boom. At this moment, an incomparably terrifying and hideous blood basin mouth rushed out from Carp's position just now, and then an incomparably huge body was exposed. The Neptune was shocked. Boom, boom, boom. Dozens of waves rushed up, and a hideous and terrifying sea king came out from the bottom of the sea. Hee, tremble, tremble, and Fan jumped onto his fortress with a pale face, revealing a cruel and excited smile. The method he has been hiding is to use the Sea Kings to destroy these navies. As for why he can attract the Sea Kings. 5 days ago. You're back again. Is there anything wrong with you? 5 days ago. Fishman Island. You're back again. Is there anything wrong with you? Neptune, the gigantic mermaid king, frowned as he looked at the diminutive and Fan, and the 10 cold-faced Shawu Revolutionary Army captains behind him. I have something to ask you for help with. Quote. And Fan, who was wearing a windbreaker in the uniform of the Shawu Revolutionary Army, said that he didn't care about Neptune's dissatisfied tone. He went straight to the point and said that he had something to ask him for help and didn't turn so many corners. What do you want me to do? Neptune said with some dissatisfaction, although Anfin and those 10 guys put a lot of pressure on him, but he is the king of a race, not a straw bale, and he still has some hard energy. Anfin looked into Neptune's eyes, and then said slowly, I want the blood of Princess Shirahoshi. Quote. What? You want Shirahoshi's blood? What do you want? I will never allow Shirahoshi to be harmed in any way. Neptune's face was instantly ugly, and he directly refused coldly. This little daughter is the flesh of his heart. The dragon has reverse scales, and if he touches it, he will die. Even if he fights for his own life, he will not let his daughter lose a single hair. I have to get the blood of Princess Shirahoshi. I need her blood to defuse a crisis. And Fan said very patiently. It's not negotiable. Neptune waved his hand coldly. You can go, come on, see off guests. Quote. Neptune called the guards directly and asked Anfin to go out. But after waiting for a long time, not a single fishman soldier came in. Someone, Neptune yelled with an ugly face, but no matter how much he shouted, not a single fishman soldier entered, and the outside was as calm as stagnant water, like a stone that could not ripple. At this time, even a fool can see that something is wrong. What's more, Anfin himself came in with swords and people, which was originally a big problem, but Neptune deliberately ignored it. What did you do? Neptune looked angrily at Anfin. Don't worry, I'm here to beg people. I didn't do anything harmful to my master, I hypnotized them with a force. Quote. And Fan smiled, that power will be the ability of the mind. Neptune trembled with anger, and he said angrily to Anfin, we saved you, but you didn't know how to repay us, but came to threaten us, we were blind, and actually saved a white-eyed wolf. Quote. Hearing this, and Fan's brows furrowed, the expression on his face changed instantly, he looked at Neptune coldly and said, don't say what you say so ugly, I am already very good to your Fishman Island, you may not know. Fishman Island has now been taken over by me, which means that I am now the master of Fishman Island. Quote. And Fan's heart suddenly became angry, he was in a good mood now, full of impatience, saying that he was a white-eyed wolf. Didn't this add fuel to the fire? If he is a white-eyed wolf, does he still need to be polite? Will Fishman Island still exist? He went straight in, and the violence was resolved. But because Neptune and his family saved him, he first took over the management of Fishman Island from Mr. Whitebeard, and he planned to wait for the resolution of this naval crisis, and then declare the world, and then garrison it to protect it. This Fishman Island can be quite strategically wanted. What? You take over our Fishman Island? Do you know that we are under the protection of Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, and you dare to rob his territory, and you want to be killed by the enraged Whitebeard? Neptune said coldly. You probably don't know. Whitebeard is now my teacher, and I've agreed to take care of Fishman Island. Anfin said indifferently as he looked at Neptune. Neptune was stunned for a moment, then sneered, this joke is so funny. Quote. It's true. A familiar voice came, and I saw Princess Otahime walk in with a complicated face. What are you talking about? Neptune suddenly struck like lightning, and he said in disbelief. Didn't Daddy Whitebeard say that as long as he is still here, Fishman Island will always accept his protection? Quote. You don't like to pay attention to the human affairs outside, just look at it. Princess Otahime handed him a newspaper. The son of Sin and Fan established the Shawu Revolutionary Army, captured the original Navy G1 branch, angered the world government. 7 days later, the Navy will dispatch the strongest combat force in history, the Marshal of the Air Strong Declaration. Even if the son of Sin and Fan is accepted as a student by the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, we all want to clean up the son of Sin at all costs. This. Neptune looked at the newspaper stupidly. Why did this guy become Whitebeard's disciple only after he went out for more than half a month? You want the blood of the White Star? I can give it to you, you come with me. Princess Otahime said to Anfan, she's sleeping right now. Quote. What do you mean? Anfan squinted at Princess Otahime and said to him, what are you doing with this? Don't you want her blood? A little. Princess Otahime's words trembled a little. Anfan was stunned. He shook his head. You are wrong. Bai Xing is like my own sister in my heart. I will feel distressed if I cut her body. I want her blood, not blood, I understand. I want her previous blood. Quote. Before, both were stunned. When Shirahoshi was born, you saw that she was so big and different from ordinary people. You must have thought that something was wrong, and you should have taken her blood for a physical examination or something. You nobles are very arrogant. You should have preserved your blood. Quote. This is Shirahoshi's blood from the previous blood test, 20 milliliters. Quote. A sealed blood tube was held in the palm of Anfan's hand. This is the second time you've helped me. Quote. Leader, 50 squads have been assembled. Quote. A Shawu Revolutionary Army commander walked into Anfan's office and saluted. Yes, I'll go right away, you go down first. Quote. Anfan said with his back to the captain, holding a small bowl in his hand. In this small bowl, there was half a bowl of scarlet blood, and the smell of blood was scattered. Roar, roar, a terrifying roar rang out, filling the sea with an atmosphere of oppression, shock, and suffocation. The naval soldiers on the Navy warship were so frightened by the dozens of huge sea kings that appeared next to them that their eyeballs were about to burst out. These sea kings come in all shapes, such as poisonous sea snakes, giant sea frogs, ancient sea turtles. All kinds of terrifying sea kings appeared, ranging from hundreds of meters in size to several thousand meters in size. How come? Sweating profusely, he looked at these sea kings with cold eyes, and he was terrified in his heart. These sea kings are all unique to the deep sea, and they are not small sea kings in the shallow sea at all. Why did these deep sea kings appear around? Is it that Anfan who did the hell? But how can he have the ability to drive these deep sea kings? Although I devoured the blood of the White Emperor. But because this is the blood of a year ago, the characteristics of the Sea Emperor contained in it have long disappeared. And I do not have the conditions to summon the Sea King, but Bai Xing is also the future Sea Emperor, although the characteristics have disappeared, but the breath belonging to the Sea Emperor is still there. I devoured these breaths, and added these breaths to my blood with the power of fusion. If I put a lot of blood in it, I can give some illusions to the surrounding Sea Kings, thinking that their king will be attacked and will quickly rush over. Quote. Anfan stood on the fortress city, looked at a huge bloody wound in his palm, and muttered. Of course, this is just his guess based on the last time Shirahoshi accidentally cut the sea sickle grass and shed a drop of blood, causing a sea king. Although he guessed that 8 or 9 were not far from 10, Anfan ignored that the sea kings had the same intelligence as humans. Even if he devoured the blood of the White Star and could summon the Sea King would not recognize him as the Sea King, but would instead devour Anfan, because in their memory, the Sea Emperor had always been a female and huge figure, and was a personal fish, not a male human. Fortunately, Fan didn't want to gain some power, so he would do the heart-wrenching thing of directly cruelly putting blood and devouring a girl who was only 1.5 years old. In order to obtain the Sea Emperor trait, he has the ability to summon the same Sea King class, and if he does so, he will pay a terrible price. You are so bold that you dare to attack our great king. A voice reached the ears of all the navies, and it was a Sea King who spoke, and his tone was full of cold murderous intent. The Sea Kings can speak, everyone will know it by watching the One Piece Fish Man Island editor. King. All the navies were stunned when they heard this. The king of the Sea Kings. Does the Sea Kings have kings? To Sora and Carp and Z's expressions moved, he seemed to understand something. We did not attack your king, you are mistaken. A Navy soldier shouted. As soon as these words came out, the faces of the empty people changed suddenly. Shut up. Quote, you dare to quibble, you are looking for death. Roar. A huge serpentine sea king of 1,000 meters opened his bloody mouth, and directly swallowed a huge naval warship as food, without a bloody field, and its simple horror directly shocked everyone. Roar, roar. An angry roar sounded, and dozens of sea kings moved, directly setting off monstrous waves, fiercely opening their bloody mouths and devouring the surrounding warships, like sharks devouring small fish. In an instant, more than 30 warships disappeared, and all the navies on them were eaten like food, and were digested by the Sea Kings. Oh my God, these Sea Kings are so vicious. Quote, we are no match for them at all. Quote, nothing to do, run. Quote, all the Navy soldiers were frightened at this moment, and shouted in horror. Roar, boom. A spearhead shark resembling an arrow about 300 meters long and dozens of meters thick directly violently charged and cut a naval warship in half with an arrow, and the navy above was directly shattered by the terror, and scarlet blood spread on the surface of the sea. Sora and the others looked extremely ugly, especially Sora, whose faces turned white. The Sea Kings, I'm going to kill you. Quote, so many naval warships turned into nothingness, and the sky went crazy directly, and the overlord color domineering on the body overflowed wildly, leaping into the air, and punching the air fiercely, directly killing the sea frog with a huge size of thousands of meters, and the whole body was beaten to pieces, and the smelly blood overflowed, staining the whole sea red. The strong smell of blood directly stimulated these Sea Kings, and the devouring attack broke out, frantically devouring the warships around them, and several Sea Kings were attracted by the air, set off waves, and directly flanked away. Ice Age. An extremely fast ice force froze the sea, and as a result, a huge Sea King shook his whole body, and the monstrous force directly shattered the ice, and its powerful ocean shock force shook the child by itself. You brutes. Quote, Carp wields a huge iron fist in a rage, each punch that kills a giant Sea King. A huge Sea King, jumping high and shooting diagonally from different directions, the eyes that are as tall as a human are full of ferocious rage, glancing at the food in front of him, a huge tail whip came, and the whole person was shot several meters away and planted into the sea. The entire naval warship formation was directly reduced to a feast on the plate of the Sea Kings, one warship after another was destroyed, and hundreds of navies were devoured. At this moment, the fierce naval warship was treated as a piece of fat under the overlord of the sea, the Sea King, and it was frantically bitten. Its crazy and terrifying power directly stunned Fan on the fortress, originally thought that some navies could hold on in the face of the Sea Kings, but he didn't expect that in an instant, there was nothing. The entire battlefield is ravaged by the brutality of the Sea Kings, and it has completely become a paradise for the Sea Kings. I didn't expect the power of dozens of large Sea Kings to be so terrifying. Beast Kaido said in shock as he watched the Sea Kings rolling wildly in front of the fortress, setting off terrifying waves. Charlotte Lingling next to her forgot to eat the cake in her hand, and looked at the shocking scene for a long time before she said, is this the real strength of the overlord in the sea? More than 80 naval warships, under the blow of this group of Sea Kings, all perished in less than a few minutes. Boom. As the last warship was devoured, the navy that had killed the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army ended in annihilation. The majestic navy all the way is under the painstaking design of Fan. Among the millions of troops stationed in the navy around the world, a quarter of the 200,000 main elite forces were wiped out, and the rear admiral inevitably died under the terror of the Sea Kings, and most of the lieutenant generals were killed and wounded. Roar. Quote, the sea water was mixed with scarlet blood, and when the navy warship was destroyed, dozens of Sea Kings slowly sank and re-entered the sea, but there was one sea king with a body size of 5,000 meters, which could be said to be a king level, and only after taking a deep look at the fortress did it slowly sink. This glance scared Fan into a cold sweat, and he remembered that these sea kings were of the same wisdom as humans, and if they attacked this fortress, then everything would be in vain. They can wipe out a huge navy in an instant, and they can destroy his fortress in a minute. With the horror of these sea kings, the entire fortress island is afraid that it will sink directly. But fortunately, although these sea kings don't know why they are not interested in him, it is certain that these sea kings have already discovered him. As for why he didn't do it, it may be the faint sea emperor aura on his body. Dozens of sea kings are so terrifying, that day after Bai Xing became the sea emperor, Poseidon, ruling the entire underwater world of sea kings. How terrifying is this? And Fan said with palpitations, looking at the already calm sea in front of him, if it weren't for the large amount of blood on the turbid surface of the sea. No one would believe that just now, more than 80 naval warships were wiped out by a group of terrifying deep-sea sea kings. Ancient weapons, I must get these sharp weapons. And Fan clenched his fists and thought, he was too shocked, the power of the sea emperor on the ice was so terrifying, so what about the two ancient weapons that were as famous as the sea emperor? Boom! At this moment, a strong wind struck, and the speed was very terrifying, like a thunderbolt suddenly exploding in the clear sky. No one could have imagined. What did you fool? Sora's face was covered with blood, and a punch full of anger slammed into Fan's face, which contained terrifying power enough to kill Fan on the spot. Good speed. Quote. Fan's pupils shrank, and he had already rushed in front of him before he even saw an empty figure. Empty. Your navy is really getting more and more fond of sneak attacks. Quote. At the moment, Whitebeard blocked the punch and hit it directly, and the atmosphere shattered like glass, blocking the punch full of anger and terror in the air. Boom! The hard ground under his feet was shattered by the massive impact of power, and Whitebeard and Sora were shaken back several meters. Whitebeard stopped beside Fan, and the empty stopped in front of Carp, Z, Qingzi, and Yellow Ape. At this time, Carp and the others were very embarrassed, and there was more or less blood on their faces. After all, they had been attacked intensively by the terrifying deep-sea sea kings. If it was 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be fine, but 7 or 8 or 9 crazy attacking sea kings, they couldn't do it at all. It's okay, teacher. Fan asked Whitebeard. The empty punch just now was definitely a critical hit, very terrifying. His heart was pinched just now, and he almost thought he was going to hang up. Marshal, Carp and the others shouted into the air with serious faces. I'm fine. Sora wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at Fan with a resentful face. What the hell have you done? Why are the sea kings of the deep sea here? Sora roared angrily. When you set out on the expedition, there was a mighty navy of 50,000 men. It's like falling from heaven to hell. He really wants to scrape Fan with 1,000 knives and split the corpse of 5 horses. Carp and the others also looked at Fan with a look of resentment. Boy, what the hell have you done? These thousands of meters of sea kings in the deep sea will swim here. Carp said angrily. He hadn't really been angry for a long time, but today nearly 50,000 deaths directly hit his heart and ignited his anger. Boy, you are completely a son of sin. I will never forgive you, Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. I never wanted to kill anyone, but you completely aroused my murderous intent. I should have killed you just before. Z roared angrily. Qingzi looked at Fan coldly, and the cold meaning on his body almost froze the air. Why do you say that? Just kill him, and a few of us will completely destroy this fortress. The Yellow Ape said coldly. Hearing the angry voices of the 5 of them, Fan shook his head and smiled coldly. He said loudly, I'm not a murderer. What are you all blaming me for? You are so excited. It seems that you have personally buried these 50,000 navy. Have your eyes grown to fart? Why do you blame me for the matter? You can't protect your own subordinates, so you have to blame others. Isn't it because you brought the deep-sea sea kings to it, and our navy will be wiped out directly? Fan laughed suddenly. He looked at the Yellow Ape like an idiot, and said, your navy is completely annihilated. Don't care about I don't know how many people died under your hands. They are dead. Who are they going to blame? If according to what you idiot said, you are like this, why do you come all the way to me? If you don't come, these 50,000 people will not be able to be bullies happily. Quote. HMPH. the elite navy is actually just a group of bullies. What kind of cowardice do you really think I don't know? And Fan said with a sneer. The faces of the five suddenly turned the color of pork liver. In the final analysis, your navy just can't afford to lose. Win or lose depends on your means. Do you know this truth? In vain, you are still a naval marshal, a naval admiral, 3 vice admirals, and the world's famous powerhouses. In my eyes, you TMD are just a bunch of shit that you can't afford to lose. What do you say? Do you dare to say it again? The empty face was full of anger, and a monstrous killing intent swept out, impacting and Fan. HMPH, don't be domineering in front of me, Anfin, he is right, you are shit that you can't afford to lose. Quote. Whitebeard snorted coldly, and the overlord color exploded all over his body, like a sharp arrow, directly colliding with the domineering aura of the air overlord, and the two stirred up a wave of heavy ash, and the sky above was directly torn out of a heavenly ravine under the influence of these two powerful forces, which was extremely terrifying. Whitebeard, are you this kid's Baomu? Kong Leng said coldly. Every time he made a move, Whitebeard would always stand up to block his attack, making him helpless against and Fan again and again, making Sora quite angry. Whitebeard retorted directly. Kong, you are not ashamed, you actually have the face to say this. Every time you make a move, it is a sneak attack, and you sneak attack on juniors. You are still not a marshal who controls the army of millions in a dignified manner. Quote. Kong Wenyan's face turned red, but it quickly disappeared again, and he snorted coldly, and Fan is the greatest evil in the world. As long as you can kill him, everything is worth it, for the justice of the world. Quote. HMPH, I can see who you are. Whitebeard, he doesn't say anything anymore, it's all nonsense and a waste of tongue when he talks too much. After being an opponent for so many years, he developed a dislike for the first time with this Admiral Sora. Carp, Zephyr, you two will avenge the 50,000 dead Navy who killed this kid and give me 50,000 tragic deaths, and use your blood to honor the justice of 50,000. Quote. If you two give me any more problems, I won't spare you. Quote. Sora shouted angrily at Carp and General Z. There were 2 chances to kill and Fan before, but Zephyr and Carp, the 2 fools, didn't even strike hard at the beginning, and their subordinates showed mercy, so that this evil didn't know how to attract the Sea King, resulting in the tragic death of 50,000 navies. In this matter, Carp and General Z have to bear a certain responsibility, Hollow thought coldly. Rest assured, Marshal, I will surely wring off the head of this son of sin. Boy, I'm going to kill you. You have to be careful. I'm not going to show mercy this time. Carp looked at Anfin with murderous intent. Anfin was the 3rd person who made him angry, the first Roger, and the second was his son Dorag. If you want to fight my students, get past me first. Whitebeard said coldly with his blade raised. These guys don't exist when he doesn't exist. And Fan chuckled and looked at them, touched his chin and said lightly, so many people are besieging the 2 of us, is this the righteous navy? And Fan's previous sentence made Carp and the others a little ashamed, but the latter sentence directly angered them. Boy, you're talking too much. Carp shouted coldly, his iron fist, I hope you can withstand my iron fist of love, and don't be killed. Quote. And Fan looked at Carp and General Z with interest, and he smiled, it's a pity that your opponent is not me. Quote. As soon as these words came out, the people on the other side were stunned. Sora took the lead and sneered, why, you feel scared. Before he finished speaking, and Fan directly interrupted impatiently, old thing, I'm not talking to you. Quote. You. Sora was furious in an instant, but the next second, his brows furrowed, his eyes looked into the distance behind and Fan in disbelief, only to see 2 figures appear leisurely. The figures are getting bigger and bigger, getting closer and closer, and finally. You 2 guys, you're so laid back. And Fan said indifferently with his hands clasped his hands. Ha ha ha, I wasn't scared by those Sea Kings, you know. I almost out on the spot, ha ha ha. Beast Kaido said with an excited smile. The deep-sea Sea Kings are really terrifying. Especially if there is more than a group, no force can stop them, unless they dare to go ashore. Quote. Charlotte Lingling said as she kept eating a stack of cakes. Why are you here? Sora looked at the 2 of them with a gloomy face. The arrival of Charlotte Lingling and Kaido the Beast, the oppressive situation suddenly changed and turned into a draw. Why can't we be here? Said the Beast Kaido excitedly, looking at the sky with interest. You know what? I saw your navy being swallowed by the Sea Kings one by one. You don't know how angry I was at the time, how much I wanted to yell, leave me a little. Hey. When Fan heard this, he suddenly smiled at the corner of his mouth. Carp's fists clenched, his muscles bursting with thick muscles, and he looked at the beast Kaido with anger on his face. Kaido, are you looking for death? Carp roared, spitting out. You want to kill me, do you have the power? Said Kaido the beast, squinting at Carp, with a wicked smile. Kaido, Charlotte Lingling, I'll give you a chance, you get out of here at once. Now here is our affair with Whitebeard and the Children of Sin. If you have to interfere, don't blame us for being ruthless. Quote. Kong took a deep breath and said slowly, his heart was full of monstrous killing intent, he only wanted to kill Fan now, and he didn't care about anything else. Hearing Sora's words, Carp and the others looked at their marshal in great surprise, and their marshal actually said the words of letting the pirates go. I want to leave, too. Kaido of the beast sighed and shook his head, you probably don't know. The four of us have formed an alliance. Charlotte Lingling said indifferently, the new world will be our territory from now on. Quote. Alliance. Sora and the others looked at these four people in shock. These four people would actually unite together. How could this be possible? If they formed an alliance, who else in the new world could stand up to them? Ha ha ha. You can call us the Four Emperors. Beast Kaido laughed and said, isn't this name very domineering? Kaido, you're wrong, I'm not one of the Four Emperors. The Four Emperors are all pirates, I'm a revolutionary army, and I can't be involved. Fan said indifferently. Sora, or let's end this war. The victory and defeat have already been decided, and it is useless to continue fighting. Whitebeard said suddenly, those two guys behind you are both future admirals, and the Navy has suffered heavy losses now, you don't want them to die here too. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.